By the way, it seems that Paul's only junior had been complaining to others about how poor his leadership was, to the point that he couldn't even consider him a boss. Paul overheard this, and they are currently in the midst of a dispute. He should have known how important it is to take care of your own junior. As for me, I had been offered a position at our overseas headquarters. I had been declining due to the current circumstances and out of consideration for Paul. But I finally decided to take on the opportunity. I'm currently preparing for my transition. I've been causing my father some worry, but we've started practicing video calls so we can keep in touch when I'm abroad. I am content because I'll be able to pursue the job that I have been dreaming of since I was a child. It's time to give it my all. Paul hardly ever helped with household chores, but Michelle didn't mind. When they went out together, Paul always took charge, letting Michelle relax and enjoy herself without any worries. It felt like they had a good balance in their relationship. However, everything changed when Michelle's mother passed away. While Michelle was at work, her father called to tell her that her mother's health had gotten worse and she had collapsed. Michelle rushed to the hospital and said her final goodbye to her mother. She decided to stay with her father to arrange the funeral. When she called Paul, he said he couldn't leave work suddenly. He missed the wake and only made it to the funeral, but it seemed like he hadn't prepared to dress appropriately for the occasion. I had to quickly find him clothes to wear, but he complained a lot, saying I should have done it earlier. With all the sadness and business of arranging the funeral, I couldn't handle Paul's complaints, so I ignored them. But he didn't seem to appreciate that and stayed in a bad mood. Since then, it feels like we've been arguing more in our marriage. It's normal to have disagreements after being married for 3 years, but lately, Paul has been picking fights aggressively. He's always telling me what to do and taking charge. I got tired of it and tried saying no a few times, but he didn't know where things were in the house. So simple tasks took a long time. Plus, he complained while trying to help, making an even bigger mess. Eventually, I realized it's easier if I just do everything myself. I didn't always do everything Paul asked. I handled some things myself to make my life easier. I mentioned preparing for my mom's first death anniversary gathering next week. Okay, I said, and Paul grumbled, oh, I have an important meeting that day. What should I do? I've told you about this gathering well ahead of time. How could he suddenly say he couldn't make it? What? You're not coming. Paul let out a heavy sigh. It's not that, but it'll be hard to leave everything to my subordinates, you know. He seemed pleased with his recent promotion and often talked about his junior team members. I felt like sighing right along with him. Please make arrangements for it, all right? I stressed. It was the day before my mom's first death anniversary gathering. When I returned home from work, Paul was sulking in the living room, drinking beer. Sorry, I'm late. Had to do overtime, he mumbled. I figured he was upset because I was late, delaying dinner. I've been waiting here for an hour, just as I expected, but it's only an hour, right? If he couldn't cook, he could have bought something. I did tell him when I'd be home. He could have taken some initiative. Holding back my frustration, I handed him a takeout box. I thought cooking would take too long, so I got this on my way home. In response, Paul slammed his beer glass on the table. Takeout again. Aren't you slacking off a bit too much lately? The last time I got takeout was about 2 weeks ago. Sure, I've been busy, and maybe I haven't been cooking every day, but still, I make sure to eat balanced meals and avoid relying on packaged food too much. Even though I don't think I deserve criticism, as I debated whether to respond, Paul, misunderstanding, added insult to injury. Can't argue when it's true, huh? Do your chores properly. You've been coming home late and claiming overtime. Maybe you're out cheating. Paul's words ignited the resentment I've been feeling. If you know I'm working late, the least you could do is make dinner. You don't have to cook. Picking up takeout isn't that hard. I always tell you when I'll be late, and even with my busy schedule, I handle all the household chores. There's no need for that attitude. Paul glared at me. You're 3 years older, remember? I could have married a younger woman, but I chose you, Paul said, expecting gratitude and obedience. You should be thankful and listen to me. No one else would want you, so you'd be in trouble if I left, right? Did he really just say that? I was furious and couldn't hold back. If you wanted a younger woman, you should have married one before we got together. I asked if you were okay with me being older, and you said yes. That's why we got married. Even without you, I can manage my life. Paul laughed mockingly. Fine, let's get a divorce. With that, he grabbed his beer and takeout and went to his room. We've argued before, but this was different. I was done with him. I decided to eat my takeout to calm down. Maybe he was just hungry and annoyed, I thought as I ate. But I couldn't shake the disbelief that this was happening the day before my mom's death anniversary. After a while, I called out to Paul from outside his room. We need to leave by 8 a.m. tomorrow, so I'll wake you up around 7. There was no response, but I felt he was awake. With that said, I went to bed. The next morning, when I woke up early, Paul was already gone. The bags I packed were still in the room. He hadn't left for the gathering without me. Where did he go? I called his phone, but he didn't pick up. He didn't respond to my texts either. With no other option, I left a voicemail and started getting ready to leave alone. I finally reached Paul while waiting for the train at the station. I have a meeting. Can't leave it to my juniors, was all he said before the call ended abruptly. I was overwhelmed with a mix of anger and resignation, feeling stunned and bewildered. Before I could dwell on it further, the train arrived, burdened with luggage meant for two. I boarded alone. Upon reaching my father's house, he asked anxiously, "Where's Paul?" Seeing my father's sadness since my mother's passing, I didn't want to add to his worries. Taking a deep breath, I forced a smile and replied, "Sorry, he got called into an important meeting. He was supposed to come, but with his recent promotion, it sounded crucial, so I encouraged him to prioritize it." My father nodded in understanding. "I understand. He's working hard. It's disappointing not to see him, but your mother would understand. Let him know he's always welcome here." His words stung a bit, but I maintained my smile throughout the day. With no word from Paul and the night growing late, I didn't reach out to him either. Planning to stay the night and return home the next day as planned, I saw no need to contact him. Though it felt childish, I thought about making him his favorite dish, hamburgers, tomorrow. With that in mind, I went to bed. The next day, I left my father's house and got home around noon. Before going grocery shopping, I wanted to drop off my bags. As I entered the living room, I saw Paul had left dirty laundry lying around, as usual. I sighed, thinking he still hadn't learned how to use the washing machine, and tossed his laundry in with mine. Taking a break and returning to the living room, I noticed something on the table. As I got closer, I couldn't believe what I saw: divorce papers already signed by him. Why? I stared at the papers in disbelief. Was this his way of asking for a divorce? I grabbed my phone from my bag. It should be Paul's lunch break. I wasn't sure if he'd answer, but to my surprise, he did. As soon as I called, I asked, "What's the meaning of these divorce papers?" Paul laughed and replied, "What's there to question? It's exactly what it seems. I don't want an older wife who won't handle household chores. That's why I want a divorce. If we split, I can find a younger wife. After all, a wife is like a status symbol, right? I can't boast about you because you're older. It's tough when my team asks about you, and avoiding the topic isn't easy." I was speechless, unable to respond. "If you want to avoid a divorce, start doing your chores properly. I'll be home as usual today, so make sure to get some beer, alright? If you disagree, take the divorce papers to court. It's your call." With that, he hung up, leaving me in shock, unable to utter a word. Paul probably assumed I'd comply if he said that. I only did the chores because I disliked having to ask or beg him. He must have believed I did it to keep him from leaving me. Perhaps he thought I wouldn't stand up to him because he's the dominant one. Being married to a younger husband might seem glamorous to some, but in reality, there's nothing remarkable about it. I often emphasized his youth, but in truth, he's average in looks, personality, and income. There's nothing particularly special about him. Labeling him as younger was simply convenient. When we married, I worried about the age gap, but now that we're both in our 30s and he's just 3 years younger, it doesn't seem significant. If there were a larger age difference between us, perhaps I feel differently. It's disheartening to constantly be labeled as the older wife when we're practically the same age. Determined to take action, I grabbed my bag and headed straight to the family court. Submitting the divorce papers brought a sense of relief, signaling the end of our relationship. I realized I could live without Paul. With newfound freedom, I felt lighter and decided to request a few days of paid leave from my boss. Luckily, work had just slowed down, and he granted me a week off. Now divorced, I needed to organize my belongings. With minimal possessions, cleaning up was a breeze. I stored larger items in a storage unit, packed essentials and clothes in my car, and spontaneously decided to visit a hot spring resort. Since it was the off-season, I found a cheap hotel for my stay without any hassle. Driving with excitement, I indulged in the hot springs and relaxed in my room, only to be interrupted by a ringing phone. "Michelle, I asked you to get beer, didn't I? Where are you?" It was Paul's usual time to return home. I chuckled, recalling his words. "I'm at a hot spring resort." "What? A hot spring resort? Why? What's going on?" "Didn't you say to file the divorce papers if I didn't agree with you?" I pictured my ex-husband flustered, and my laughter grew. "Wait, did you really file them?" "Yes, I did." "Why?" "It was your suggestion, Paul." "Have you forgotten what you said earlier?" His tone became perturbed. "Wait, are you joking? When you say hot spring resort, do you mean some nearby spa?" "If so, I'll get dinner, so come home soon." I couldn't help but laugh at the sudden, seemingly caring tone as he claimed to be a considerate husband. It took about an hour and a half of driving. There's even an outdoor natural hot spring. It's so relaxing. I hope it doesn't rain tomorrow. Since you're going to get your own dinner, I've already packed my things so you won't have to worry about me coming back. Take care of yourself. Paul begged me to return, but I had no intention of going back. You're the one who initiated the divorce. Have you forgotten? It was obvious you were using divorce as a threat to control me. I told you, I can manage without you. Now that you've divorced your older wife, go find a younger one. Whether you can or not, I don't know. Paul fell silent. It's none of my business, but you should consider moving out of that apartment too. Finally, Paul spoke again. Why should I? His voice was barely audible. Think about your income. You'll go broke soon if you keep living there. You can't clean, do laundry, or cook. You'll need housekeeping and dining out, right? That costs money. It would be a problem if most of your salary went into rent. You thought you were the provider, but my salary is nearly double yours. You never provided for me. If anything, it was the other way around. Also, you were overconfident just because of one junior. But did you know I have multiple juniors under me and even more under them? I don't usually talk about work because Paul gets moody, but I outrank him in both position and salary. You'd think he'd notice after living together, but it seemed like he was fine finding out now. Perhaps Paul, being dominant and proud, kept his ego intact by looking down on me. Now that he can't, he must feel defeated. I've shattered his pride as payback for all these years. The reason I handled household chores without complaining, despite your domineering behavior, was partly because you were younger and I cut you some slack, and partly because it was too much hassle to ask you for anything. It's not like I needed you to stay with me. I was just taking care of your needs along with mine. So when you said, do the chores or we divorce, of course I chose divorce. We're strangers now. Goodbye then. I said what I needed to and hung up. Feeling refreshed, I savored the hotel's food afterward. As expected, Paul sought reconciliation, but I replied with a smile. I'm older than you. I'm sure you don't want me back. Presumably, he wasn't successful with younger women. Eventually, Paul gave up and moved out of the apartment. I hired a lawyer for the division of assets, demanding more to compensate for the burden of household chores imposed on me until now. Paul, being cheap, didn't hire a lawyer, so I had the upper hand. With my lawyer, we reached an agreement with favorable conditions for me. By the way, it seems Paul's only junior had been complaining to others about his poor leadership, to the extent that he couldn't even see him as a boss. Paul overheard this, and they're currently in dispute. He should have realized how crucial it is to support your own junior. As for me, I've been offered a position at our overseas headquarters. I initially declined due to the current circumstances and out of consideration for Paul. But I finally decided to seize the opportunity. I'm now preparing for my transition. Though I've caused my father some worry, we've started practicing video calls to stay connected when I'm abroad. I'm content knowing I'll be pursuing the job I've dreamt of since childhood. It's time to give it my all.
The white roses in my bouquet trembled, each petal a witness to the moment my perfect day shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. I'd spent months dreaming of this moment, standing at the altar in my designer gown, ready to say I do to Derek. The string quartet had just finished their final notes when it happened. Stop this wedding. Elaine's voice cut through the chapel like a blade. My future mother-in-law stood in her powder blue suit, her face a mask of righteous indignation. I cannot allow this farce to continue. I'm Luna, and this was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The guests started murmuring. I could feel their eyes boring into me, hungry for drama. My 5-year-old daughter Lily clutched her flower basket tighter, her bottom lip quivering. "Mother, what are you doing?" Derek's voice was tight, controlled. "Protecting you, darling." Elaine's heels clicked against the marble floor as she approached. "Your bride has been systematically undermining my authority in the company, stealing confidential information, trying to push me out." I felt the blood drain from my face. "That's ridiculous. I would never—" "I have proof." Elaine pulled out her phone, her red lacquered nails tapping the screen. "Emails, documents, all traced back to you." "Derek," I turned to him, reaching for his hand. "She's lying. You know me." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Derek's jaw clenched, his eyes darkening. Then it happened. His hand connected with my cheek, in a sharp crack that echoed through the chapel. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My best friend Sophie jumped up from the front pew, but I held up my hand to stop her. The sting spread across my face, but the pain in my heart was worse. "How dare you accuse my mother of lying?" Derek's voice was ice. "After everything she's done for us?" Lily started crying, and Sophie quickly scooped her up, shielding her from the scene. I stood there, frozen, as my world imploded. "I think we're done here." Elaine's smile was triumphant. "Derek, come along." "Daddy?" Lily's small voice broke through the chaos. Derek didn't even look at her. I watched him walk away, following his mother like he always had, the perfect, dutiful son. The man I thought I knew. The father who just abandoned his daughter at the altar. "Luna, let's go." Sophie's hand was warm on my arm. "This isn't over." But it was. The wedding was over. My relationship was over. My trust in love and family, shattered like the champagne glasses that would never be raised in celebration. As Sophie led me down the aisle, past the whispers and pitying looks, past the flowers and ribbons that now seemed like cruel decorations for my public humiliation, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was transforming into something darker, something that tasted like metal and burned like acid. "I'll need your help," I whispered to Sophie as we reached the church doors. "And I'll need Marcus." "The tech guy? Why?" I touched my cheek where Derek's hand had left its mark. "Because Elaine Brooks is going to learn what it feels like to lose everything she loves. And her precious son is going to learn that some betrayals can never be forgiven." Lily's small hand slipped into mine, and I squeezed it gently. For her, I would make them pay. For her, I would tear down their empire piece by piece until there was nothing left but ashes. The summer sun was bright outside the chapel, but I felt cold. The kind of cold that settles in your bones and turns your heart to steel. The kind of cold that makes you capable of anything. 3 days after the wedding disaster, I sat in Sophie's kitchen, staring at my phone. 17 missed calls from Derek, all within the last hour. Each one made my hand shake a little more. "He's at it again," Sophie said, sliding a glass of wine across the counter. "What did the text say?" I unlocked my screen. "The usual. He's sorry. He was shocked. His mother had evidence. He wants to talk." My finger hovered over the delete button. Funny how he couldn't even look at Lily when she cried for him at the church. The doorbell rang. Sophie checked the security camera and tensed. "It's Elaine." My wineglass froze halfway to my lips. "How did she find us?" "Luna." Elaine's voice carried through the door. "I know you're in there. We need to discuss this situation like adults." I moved to the hallway, pressing my ear against the wood. "There's nothing to discuss. You destroyed my wedding with lies." "Lies?" She laughed, that practiced society laugh that always made my skin crawl. "Darling, I have proof. Those company documents you accessed, the confidential files you copied. The timestamps don't lie." My stomach dropped. I hadn't accessed any files. I didn't even have that level of clearance. But something in her voice made me pause. She sounded too confident, too prepared. "I'm calling the police," Sophie whispered, phone in hand. I stopped her. Wait, I want to hear this. Luna, Elaine continued, her voice honey-sweet poison. Derek is willing to forgive you. We can still salvage the situation. Think of Lily. She needs her father. The father who hit me in front of the entire congregation. Silence. Then, he reacted poorly. But you provoked him, dear. You know how protective he is of me. The pieces started falling into place. The accusations, the convenient evidence, the way Derek didn't even question his mother's claims. When did you start planning this, Elaine? My voice was steady now. Was it when I questioned those strange transfers in the company accounts? Or when I noticed Derek signing documents without reading them? Another pause, longer this time. I'm trying to help you, Luna. Don't make this difficult. Like you helped Derek's first girlfriend? The one who mysteriously got that job offer across the country. I pressed my palm against the door. Or his college roommate, who suddenly transferred schools after asking too many questions about the family business. You've been digging. The honey was gone from her voice. That's dangerous, dear, especially for a single mother. Sophie grabbed my arm, her eyes wide. I squeezed her hand, letting her know I heard the threat loud and clear. Goodbye, Elaine. This isn't over, she called through the door. Derek will be filing for custody next week. We have evidence of your unstable behavior. Her heels clicked away down the hallway. I waited until the sound faded before sliding down to the floor, my legs finally giving out. Luna, Sophie sat beside me. We need to call Marcus now. Why? Because I've seen this before. The way she operates, the threats, the manufactured evidence. She pulled out her phone. Marcus used to work IT for their company. He left after, well, he needs to tell you himself, but he knows things about the Brooks family, things that could help us. I thought about Lily, sleeping upstairs in Sophie's guest room, about how she'd asked for her daddy every night since the wedding, about how Derek hadn't even tried to see her, just sent messages through his lawyer. Make the call, Sophie dialed, putting it on speaker. A male voice answered, gravelly with sleep. This better be good, Soph. Remember that favor you owe me? I'm calling it in. It's about Elaine Brooks. Silence crackled over the line. Then, give me an hour. Don't use your phones or computers until I get there. And Sophie, make sure you're not being watched. The call ended. Sophie looked at me, her expression grim. Still want to go down this road? I touched my cheek where Derek's handprint had faded, but the memory still burned. They're trying to take my daughter. I'll go down any road I have to. Through the window, I watched a black car pull away from the curb. One of Elaine's drivers, no doubt. The game was already in play, whether I was ready or not. Marcus's fingers flew across the keyboard, his face illuminated by 3 monitors in his dimly lit apartment. Your husband's an idiot who never changes his passwords, he muttered, eyes scanning lines of code. And his mother's even worse, using her grandson's birthday for everything. I leaned closer, watching email after email populate the screen. Can they trace this back to us? Not through my setup. He glanced at Sophie, who stood guard by the window. But we need to move fast. Their security team does weekly sweeps. The first email made my blood run cold. It was from Elaine to Derek, dated 3 months before our wedding. The girl is becoming problematic. She's asking questions about the offshore accounts. Handle it, or I will. There's more, Marcus said, pulling up another thread. Look at the timestamps on these documents, the ones Elaine accused you of stealing. They were accessed using Derek's credentials while you were at Lily's dance recital. Sophie moved from the window. They set you up. Wait. Marcus held up his hand, clicking through more files. Holy shit. Luna, you need to see this. The screen showed a series of transfers, millions moving through shell companies, each one authorized by Derek's electronic signature. But the dates were wrong. Some were from times I knew he was with me, others from when he was supposedly in meetings. His mother's been forging his signatures, I whispered. He's not just controlled by her, he's her puppet. Marcus nodded grimly. And her fall guy if things go south. Every illegal transaction has his name on it, not hers. My phone buzzed, another text from Derek. Please come home. We can work this out. Lily needs us both. Don't respond, Marcus warned. They're probably tracking your... He stopped, face going pale as he stared at one of the monitors. Shit, shit, shit. What is it? They're not just after custody anymore. He turned the screen toward me. They're building a case to have you declared unfit. Look at these medical records they fabricated. History of mental instability, dangerous behavior, substance abuse. The room started spinning. I gripped the desk to steady myself. They can't do that. There are laws. Laws mean nothing to people with enough money and influence, Sophie cut in. Marcus, what about that thing you mentioned? From when you worked there? He ran a hand through his hair. I found irregularities in their accounting system, started digging deeper. Next thing I knew, police were at my door with drug charges. Charges that disappeared the moment I resigned and signed an NDA. But you kept proof, Sophie pressed. Some, enough to show a pattern. He looked at me. But using it means war. They'll come at you with everything they have. I thought about Lily, about how Elaine had already started poisoning her against me with subtle comments and manufactured concerns, about how Derek stood by and watched it happen. Show me everything, I said. For the next hour, Marcus unveiled the extent of their corruption. Tax evasion, blackmail, destroyed careers, lives ruined through carefully orchestrated scandals, all orchestrated by Elaine, all pinned on others. There's one more thing, Marcus said quietly. About Derek's father's death. The insurance investigation was buried, but I found... A sharp knock at the door cut him off. We froze. Police, open up! Marcus immediately started wiping drives. Sophie grabbed my arm. Fire escape, now! The evidence is already backed up, Marcus hissed, shoving a small drive into my hand. Go, I'll hold them off. As Sophie pulled me toward the window, I heard the door splinter. Marcus's voice carried over the chaos. Officers, I can explain everything. We climbed down the fire escape in the dark, my heart pounding with each metallic clang. At street level, Sophie pushed me into her car. They're moving faster than we expected, she said, starting the engine. We need to get Lily and disappear for a while. I clutched the drive in my palm, feeling its edges bite into my skin. No more running, no more hiding. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd memorized years ago. It's time to fight fire with fire. Who are you calling? The reporter who covered Derek's father's death. The one who always suspected there was more to the story. I took a deep breath as the line connected. It's time to show the world who Elaine Brooks really is. The reporter, Claire, set her coffee cup down with a sharp click. Let me get this straight. You're telling me Elaine Brooks orchestrated her husband's death for the insurance payout. We sat in a private booth at a diner 30 miles outside the city. Sophie kept watch near the window while I spread out Marcus's evidence on the sticky table. The police report says accident. The insurance investigation suggests otherwise. I slid the drive across to her. But that's just the beginning. Claire's eyes narrowed. Why come to me now? Because they're trying to take my daughter. My voice cracked, but I forced myself steady. And because you were right 15 years ago when you wrote that article questioning James Brooks's death. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Marcus made bail. They're watching his apartment. Claire was scrolling through the files on her laptop, her expression darkening. These financial records, the shell companies. Jesus. She looked up. You know they'll come after you with everything they have. They already are. I pulled out the custody papers I'd been served that morning. They're claiming I'm mentally unstable, a danger to my child. Luna. Sophie's voice was tight. Derek just pulled up outside. My heart stopped. How did he... He's not alone, Sophie added. Elaine's with him. Claire quickly packed up her laptop. Back exit, now. But we were too late. Derek's familiar silhouette filled the doorway, Elaine's smaller frame beside him. They spotted us immediately. Luna, We're worried about you. This behavior, it's exactly what we were talking about. I stood my ground as they approached. Where's Lily? Safe, Elaine answered smoothly. With people who can provide stability. She noticed Claire and something flickered in her eyes. Miss Wilson, still chasing conspiracy theories? Still destroying lives, Mrs. Brooks, Claire countered. Derek reached for my arm. Come home, we can get you help. I jerked away. Like you helped your father? The color drained from his face. What? Show him, I told Claire. She turned her laptop around, displaying the insurance investigator's suppressed report. Derek's eyes scanned the screen, his expression shifting from confusion to horror. Mother? His voice was barely a whisper. What is this? Obvious fabrications, Elaine snapped, but her perfectly manicured nails dug into her designer purse. Your wife is clearly unwell, spreading these vicious lies, like the lies about me stealing company documents, I cut in, or the fabricated medical records you're using to take my daughter. Other diners were openly staring now. Elaine's composed mask cracked slightly. Derek, handle this, she hissed. But Derek was still reading, scrolling through years of financial records, forged signatures, buried evidence. You told me Father's death was an accident, that the brake failure, everything I did was for you. Elaine's voice turned sharp. For our family's legacy. Your father was weak, just like you're being weak now. The diner had gone silent. Even the cook behind the counter stood frozen, watching the scene unfold. Where is my daughter? I demanded again. Elaine's lips curved into a cruel smile. Safe from your influence. And by the time the courts see these medical records... You mean these records? Claire held up her phone. The ones I just emailed to every major news outlet, along with proof they were fabricated. The color drained from Elaine's face. It's over, I said quietly. The truth about James, the financial fraud, everything. By morning, everyone will know. Derek looked between his mother and me, years of manipulation finally cracking his perfect son facade. The offshore accounts, the signatures. That was you? She made you the fall guy, I told him. Every illegal transaction is in your name. His hand started shaking. Where is Lily? He asked his mother, his voice dangerous. For the first time, I saw real fear in Elaine Brooks's eyes. Derek, she started. Where is my daughter? He advanced on her, and for a moment I saw James Brooks's death reflected in her flinch. My phone buzzed again. A message from Marcus. Got her. Lily's safe. Meeting point B. I backed toward the door, Sophie and Claire flanking me. The police will have questions about James, I said. I suggest you both get lawyers. As we left, I heard Derek's voice break. How could you, Mother? The sound of shattering glass followed us into the night. The sound of a carefully constructed empire finally beginning to fall. Marcus's safe house turned out to be a cramped apartment above a Chinese restaurant. Lily slept on the worn couch, clutching her stuffed rabbit, while I watched breaking news alerts flash across my phone. The Brooks family scandal was exploding. They're freezing accounts, Marcus said, typing furiously at his laptop. Elaine's trying to move assets offshore, but Claire's article hit too fast. The feds are already involved. Sophie paced by the window, periodically checking the street below. Derek's been calling me non-stop, says he wants to help. Help himself, maybe. I ran my fingers through Lily's hair as she stirred in her sleep. He had years to choose differently. My phone lit up with a message from Claire. New source came forward. Former Brooks employee claims James's brake lines were deliberately cut. Police reopening investigation. Another text followed immediately. Elaine's assistant talking. Says there's a hidden safe in the mansion. More documents. I looked at Marcus. Can you get us in? The mansion. He shook his head. Security's too tight. Unless... He glanced at Sophie, something unspoken passing between them. No, Sophie said firmly. It's too dangerous. What? I demanded. Marcus sighed. I still have access codes from when I worked there. but they're probably watching for any system breaches. Tell her the rest, Sophie pressed. The assistant who's talking, that was my sister. Marcus's voice cracked. After I left the company, Elaine blackmailed her into staying, used her medical history against her. He swallowed hard. She killed herself last year. The room went silent except for Lily's soft breathing. Everything clicked into place. Marcus's determination to help, Sophie's protectiveness of him, the personal stake in bringing down the Brooks empire. My phone buzzed again. Derek. I know where the safe is, his message read. Let me help make this right. Sophie read over my shoulder. It's a trap. Maybe. I stood up, decision crystallizing. Or maybe he's finally choosing a side. Luna, no. Marcus grabbed my arm. You can't trust him. I don't. I gently pulled free. But I trust his anger. You saw his face when he learned about his father. A notification popped up. Breaking news about Brooks Industries stock plummeting. Another about federal agents at the corporate offices. The safe could have everything, I said. Proof about James, other victims like your sister. Enough to make sure Elaine never hurts anyone again. And if Derek's playing you, Sophie challenged, if Elaine's using him as bait, I looked at Lily, remembering how Elaine had tried to take her, how she'd manipulated her own son for decades. Then I'll deal with them both. My phone buzzed with coordinates from Derek, an abandoned parking garage. I'm coming with you, Sophie said. No. I handed her a sealed envelope. If anything happens, this has everything Claire needs to finish the story. Take care of Lily. Marcus stood. At least let me hack their security feeds. Give you eyes inside. Too risky. They'll be watching for that. I kissed Lily's forehead, breathing in her sweet, familiar scent. Sometimes the only way to end things is face to face. As I reached the door, Sophie caught my arm. Luna, revenge won't bring Marcus's sister back. It won't undo what they did to you. This isn't about revenge anymore. I met her eyes. It's about making sure they can't hurt anyone else. The night air was thick with approaching rain as I headed to my car. Another text from Derek lit up my phone. Come alone. Last chance to protect Lily from what's coming. I started the engine, checking my rearview mirror. A black SUV pulled out 2 blocks behind me. Elaine's security detail, no doubt. Let them follow. Let them think they were herding me exactly where they wanted. They didn't know about the evidence Claire was publishing hourly. Didn't know about the federal agents closing in. Didn't know that sometimes the perfect trap is the one you walk into willingly, eyes wide open. I touched my cheek where Derek had slapped me at the wedding, feeling the phantom sting of betrayal. By morning, the Brooks empire would be ashes. The only question was whether Derek would burn with it, or finally break free of his mother's web. The parking garage loomed ahead, a concrete monster in the darkness. Time to finish what they started. The parking garage echoed with my footsteps as I climbed to the 4th level. Derek stood alone by a concrete pillar, his suit wrinkled, his eyes hollow. No sign of Elaine or her security detail, but I felt their presence, waiting in the shadows. The safe, I said, keeping my distance. Where is it? Behind Father's portrait in the study. His voice was rough. The combination is Lily's birthday. Of course it was. Elaine's final mockery, using my daughter's birth date to protect her secrets. Why help me now? Because I remember how she looked at him that night. Derek's hands trembled. Father was asking questions about the accounts. She told him to drop it. The next day. A car door slammed somewhere below. Derek's head snapped up. You need to go. Now. Too late. Footsteps surrounded us, echoing from multiple directions. Elaine emerged from behind a pillar, flanked by 2 security guards. I'm disappointed, Derek. She sighed like a teacher with a failing student. Though I suppose weakness runs in your father's blood. My phone buzzed, a message from Sophie. Federal agents raiding mansion now. Stall them. It's over, Elaine, I said. The feds are at your house. They'll find everything. She smiled, the same smile she wore at my wedding. You think I'd leave evidence in a safe? That's what safety deposit boxes in Geneva are for. She nodded to her guards. Take care of this. Make it look like a domestic dispute gone wrong. Derek stepped forward. Mother, stop! The crack of gunfire split the air. Derek stumbled, red blooming across his chest. I screamed as he fell. Such a disappointment, Elaine said softly. Like father, like son. I dove behind a concrete pillar as more shots rang out. Derek lay motionless, his blood pooling on the concrete. My phone skittered away as I rolled, showing one final message from Sophie. Police coming. Hold on. You know what fascinates me, Luna? Elaine's voice echoed through the garage. How you actually thought you could win? That you could take my son, my company, my life's work? A bullet chipped concrete near my head. I scrambled to another pillar, trying to keep track of the footsteps approaching from multiple angles. I built this empire from nothing, she continued, sacrificed everything. And you thought you could destroy it with what? Some leaked documents, news articles. You killed your husband, I called out, trying to buy time. Your own son. For what? Money? For control. Her voice was closer now. Something you never understood. In this world, you either control or are controlled. There is no middle ground. A guard appeared on my left. I kicked out, catching his knee. He fell with a grunt, his gun sliding across the concrete. I lunged for it, but a sharp pain exploded in my shoulder as another shot rang out. Mother like daughter, Elaine said, standing over me as I clutched my bleeding shoulder. Lily will learn the same lesson you never did, about power, about family, about sacrifice. You'll never touch her. I spat blood, my vision blurring. I already have. She smiled. Who do you think has custody while you're here, having this tragic accident? By morning, she'll be on a plane to our house in Switzerland. A fresh start, away from all this ugliness. Sirens wailed in the distance. Elaine checked her watch. Time to go, make it clean, she told the remaining guard. As she turned away, I saw Derek move. Just slightly, his hand inching toward his jacket. You forgot one thing, I called after her. About control, she paused. Oh, sometimes. I met Derek's eyes across the concrete. You lose it. The shot rang out. Elaine's eyes widened as she looked down at the red stain spreading across her expensive blouse. Derek's hand shook as he lowered the gun. You... she gasped. Goodbye, Mother, Derek whispered, then his hand fell limp. The remaining guard fled as police sirens screamed closer. I crawled to Derek, pressing my hands against his wound. His pulse was weak, fading. Lily, he gasped, tell her, I'm sorry. Tell her yourself, I said, but his eyes were already closing. Blue and red lights flooded the garage. As paramedics rushed in, I watched Elaine's blood mix with her son's on the concrete. The empire she built, the lives she destroyed, all ending here in a parking garage, with the wail of sirens as her requiem. My shoulder throbbed as darkness crept at the edges of my vision. The last thing I saw was Sophie's face appearing above me, her lips forming words I couldn't hear. The hospital lights flickered as I opened my eyes. Sophie sat beside my bed, dark circles under her eyes. 3 days, she said. You've been out for 3 days. My shoulder throbbed with each heartbeat. Derek? Critical condition. They don't know if... She stopped as Marcus burst into the room. They found it, he said, breathless. The real safe, not in the study, in Elaine's private elevator shaft. Everything was there. James's murder, the offshore accounts, decades of blackmail. Elaine? My throat felt like sandpaper. Survived. She's under guard in the secure wing. Sophie's hands clenched. But Luna, there's something else. Something worse. A detective appeared in the doorway, his face grim. Mrs. Brooks, we need to talk about your daughter. My heart monitor spiked. Where's Lily? Gone, Marcus said. Elaine's people moved her before the police arrived. Private jet to Switzerland, just like she threatened. I ripped out my IV, ignoring Sophie's protests. How long until they land? That's the thing, the detective said. The flight plan was fake. The jet diverted to a private airstrip in Mexico. The room spun as I stood. She's running with my daughter. Luna, you can't, Sophie started. Watch me. 6 hours later, I stood in a Mexican villa's courtyard, my shoulders screaming in pain. Marcus had traced Elaine's emergency protocols, finding this safe house. Sophie and local police surrounded the property, but I'd insisted on going in alone. Elaine sat by the pool, looking impossibly composed despite her bandaged wound. Lily played nearby, oblivious to the armed guards watching from the shadows. I wondered when you'd arrive, Elaine said, not looking up from her drink. Always so predictable in your maternal instincts. It's over. I moved closer, each step deliberate. The evidence is public. Derek's testimony when he recovers will bury you. Let her go. Derek, she laughed softly. My greatest disappointment. Did you know he cried the first time I made him sign those documents? Such weakness. Where's his father's weakness when he questioned your methods? Or your sister-in-law's when she threatened to expose you? Necessary sacrifices. Her eyes finally met mine. You never understood, Luna. Family isn't about love. It's about legacy, power, survival. No. I watched Lily splash in the shallow end, her innocent laughter cutting through the tension. Family is what you destroyed to build your empire, what you sacrificed for control, movement in the shadows, guards shifting positions. Elaine's hand moved slightly, a signal. Last chance, she said. Walk away, live. Lily will want for nothing, except her mother's love. Love? She stood, mask finally cracking. Love didn't build Brooks Industries. Love didn't secure our position. Love is a weakness I burned out of this family years ago. Then you failed. I stepped closer, because Derek loved his father enough to finally stop you. And I love Lily enough to die here if I have to. Her hand moved again, another signal, but no guards emerged. Your men won't come, I said. Marcus found your offshore accounts. They've already been paid to stand down. For the first time, fear flickered in her eyes. Impossible. You taught Derek well, about power, control, survival. He gave us access before the shooting. Every account, every failsafe. Lily noticed me then, her face lighting up. Mommy? Don't move, Elaine snapped, but Lily was already running toward me. I caught her with my good arm as police flooded the courtyard. Elaine didn't resist as they approached, her empire crumbling around her. You'll never understand, she called as they led her away. What it takes to build something lasting. I held Lily tighter, breathing in her familiar scent. You're wrong. I understand perfectly. You build it with love, not fear, with truth, not manipulation, with family, not control. As we walked away, Lily chattering about her unexpected vacation, I thought about Derek fighting for his life in that hospital, about James Brooks questioning his wife's methods, about Marcus's sister choosing death over submission. The price of empire was written in their blood. But the cost of love, that was written in the tears on my daughter's cheeks as she hugged me, in the strength it took to break cycles of control, in the courage to choose truth over power. Some empires fall, others transform, and sometimes, from the ashes of control, something stronger grows, built not on fear, but on the very thing Elaine Brooks spent a lifetime trying to destroy. Love. The autumn wind rustled through the courtroom as Elaine Brooks stood for sentencing. Her designer suit hung loose on her frame, prison having stripped away her polished exterior. I sat in the back row, watching the woman who'd tried to destroy my life face her own destruction. Before sentencing, the judge said, Mrs. Brooks has requested to address the court. Elaine turned, her eyes finding mine. I built everything to last, she said, her voice carrying that familiar steel. To protect my family from becoming what I was. A nobody from nowhere, fighting for scraps. She paused, something almost human crossing her face. I thought I was making you all stronger. The judge's gavel fell like thunder, pronouncing 25 years. As they led her away, I thought about strength, about the different ways we break and rebuild. Outside the courthouse, Sophie waited with Lily, who was drawing pictures on the steps. Marcus stood nearby, his sister's photo pinned to his jacket, a silent witness to justice. "Ready?" Sophie asked. I nodded, but stopped at the sight of Derek being wheeled out of a hospital transport van. 4 months of recovery had aged him years. Our eyes met and he gestured for me to approach. "The physical therapy's working," he said, touching his chest where the bullet had nearly taken his life. "Doctor says I might walk without assistance soon." Lily looked up from her drawing. "Daddy's getting stronger." "Yes," I said, watching them together. "We all are." Derek handed me an envelope. The last of the offshore accounts, transferred to a trust for Lily. And, he hesitated, Mother's journals, from before she married Father. I thought you should have them. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, I opened the journals. Elaine's early entries revealed a woman I'd never known, desperate, afraid, watching her own mother destroy their family through weakness and indecision. Page after page showed her transformation, each hardship building the walls that would eventually become her prison. My phone buzzed. Claire, the reporter. "Running follow-up story, interview." I declined. Some stories don't need more telling. Sophie brought tea, settling beside me. "Marcus is moving to the coast, says he needs a fresh start." "And you?" She smiled, touching the ring on her finger. "Some ghosts are worth keeping close." Through the window, I watched Lily's swing sway in the wind. The same wind that had carried white rose petals on my wedding day, that had whispered through the parking garage during the shootout, that now carried away the last pages of Elaine's empire. Derek's physical therapy schedule sat on my desk, next to Lily's school registration forms. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps understanding. The line between protection and control, between justice and vengeance, was thinner than I'd imagined. "Luna," Sophie said softly, reading the journals over my shoulder. She was pregnant when she married James. A boy, stillborn. Suddenly, Elaine's obsession with legacy, with control, shifted into sharper focus. The child she lost became the empire she built, every decision aimed at preventing another loss. I closed the journal, thinking of Lily sleeping upstairs, of Derek learning to walk again, of Marcus honoring his sister's memory, of Sophie finding love in the aftermath of chaos. We all build empires of one kind or another, some of brick and money, others of memory and love, some to protect, others to control. The trick is knowing the difference. A noise upstairs, Lily calling out in her sleep. As I climbed the stairs, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman who'd stood at that altar felt like a stranger now. She'd wanted revenge. I wanted something else. Something stronger than Elaine's empire had ever been. In Lily's room, I smoothed her hair, breathing in the quiet. On her nightstand sat a family drawing, Derek in his wheelchair, Sophie and Marcus holding hands, me standing tall. No perfect endings, no complete victories. Just people, broken and healing, choosing love over power, truth over control. Outside, the wind continued its eternal dance, carrying away the last whispers of Elaine's legacy. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own choices between protection and control. But tonight, in the quiet of hard-won peace, I finally understood what Elaine never could. True strength isn't in what we build to keep others out, but in what we build to let them in.
The silence at our dinner table feels like a living thing, coiled and ready to strike. I watch Daniel's fingers drum against his wine glass, a nervous tick I've never noticed in 15 years of marriage. His phone buzzes again, the 4th time in 20 minutes, and I see Rachel's name flash across the screen before he hastily flips it face down. I'm Layla, and until exactly 8 minutes ago, I thought I knew what my life was. "Can I have more pasta, Mom?" Tommy asks, fork scraping against his empty plate. His dark eyes, so much like Daniel's, peer up at me hopefully. "Of course, sweetheart." My voice sounds strange, distant, as if someone else is speaking through me. I reach for Tommy's plate, but my hand trembles, and I knock over Daniel's wine glass. Red liquid spreads across our pristine white tablecloth like blood. Jesus, Layla, Daniel mutters, jumping up to avoid the spill. What's gotten into you? What's gotten into me? The text I glimpsed replays in my mind. Missing you already. Last night was perfect. I dab at the spreading stain with my napkin, buying time, fighting the urge to scream. Sorry, just clumsy tonight. The lie tastes bitter. Tommy, honey, why don't you go start your homework? I'll bring your pasta up in a minute. Tommy groans but slides off his chair. Fine. But can I have ice cream later? We'll see. I force a smile, watching him disappear upstairs. The moment he's gone, the air grows thick with unspoken accusations. Daniel's already reaching for his phone, and I notice how he angles the screen away from me as he checks it. When did this start? How long have I been blind? Big project? I ask, my voice carefully neutral. You seem distracted. Yeah, the merger's keeping everyone on their toes. He doesn't meet my eyes. Rachel's been coordinating with the legal team, and there's always some new fire to put out. Rachel. Of course it's Rachel. Young, ambitious Rachel, who always seems to need Daniel's input after hours, who laughs too loudly at his jokes during company parties, who's apparently making his nights perfect. Funny, I say, standing to clear the plates. I thought the merger was finished last month. You mentioned celebrating with the team, remember? Daniel's head snaps up, and for a split second, I see panic flash across his face before he schools his features. Different merger! Look, I should probably head back to the office. These documents won't review themselves. It's 7:30, Daniel. I grip the edge of the table, knuckles white. Tommy was hoping you'd help with his science project tonight. Tomorrow, I promise. He's already standing, straightening his tie. Don't wait up. As he grabs his keys, I think about the sacrifices I've made. Leaving my marketing career to raise Tommy. Moving across the country for his promotion. Supporting every late night, every missed weekend, every broken promise. Daniel! I call out just as he reaches the door. He pauses, hand on the doorknob. Yeah? Give Rachel my best. The slight stiffening of his shoulders is all the confirmation I need. He doesn't turn around, doesn't defend himself, just walks out and closes the door with a quiet click that sounds like the end of everything. I sink into my chair, staring at the wine stain on the tablecloth. Upstairs, I can hear Tommy humming as he works on his homework, blissfully unaware that his world is about to change. My phone sits next to my plate, and I pick it up with trembling fingers, scrolling to Sophie's number. Hey, I text, can you meet tomorrow? I need a lawyer. The response comes instantly. Of course, everything okay? I look at the empty chair where my husband sat, at the space where he should be helping our son with his homework, at the life I thought I knew unraveling thread by thread. No, I reply. But it will be. Sophie's law office smells like leather and lemon polish, but all I can focus on is the growing pile of credit card statements spread across her desk. Each receipt tells its own story. Expensive restaurants I've never heard of, hotel charges, jewelry stores. My stomach churns as I recognize the dates. Our anniversary, my birthday, even the day we finalized Tommy's adoption. He's been planning this for months, I say, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. While I was helping Tommy with his science fair project, Daniel was buying Rachel diamond earrings. Sophie leans back in her chair, her professional mask slipping to reveal genuine concern. Have you checked your joint accounts? That's the thing. I pull out my phone, showing her the banking app. Large transfers to a private account I didn't know existed. He's been siphoning money since his promotion. Bastard's been preparing his exit strategy. Sophie's fingers tap against her desk. But he made mistakes. Sloppy ones. A knock interrupts us, and Sophie's assistant pokes her head in. Mrs. Thompson, your son's school is on line 1. My heart stops. Tommy? I grab the phone, already imagining accidents, injuries. This is Layla Thompson. Mrs. Thompson, I'm calling because your husband picked Tommy up early today. He mentioned a family emergency? The room tilts sideways. There must be some mistake. I didn't authorize. He's listed as an approved guardian, ma'am. They left about 20 minutes ago. I drop the phone, already grabbing my purse. Sophie's on her feet too, reading my panic. He wouldn't, I start, but the words die in my throat. Because he would. because I threatened his perfect facade, and now he's retaliating. "I'll call Judge Martinez," Sophie says, already dialing. "Get to your house, now." The drive home is a blur of red lights and horn blasts. My hands shake so badly I nearly crash twice. When I pull into our driveway, Daniel's car is there, and through the window I can see Tommy sitting at the kitchen counter, apparently doing homework. I force myself to breathe, to walk, not run, to the door. It's unlocked. "Hey, Mom!" Tommy calls out cheerfully. "Dad picked me up early. We got ice cream." Daniel emerges from his home office, casual as can be in his workout clothes. "Layla, didn't expect you home so early." "Tommy, sweetie, could you go upstairs for a minute?" My voice sounds strange, tight. "Dad and I need to talk." Once Tommy's gone, I advance on Daniel. "You had no right?" "No right?" He cuts me off, voice low but sharp. "He's my son too, and since you're clearly planning something with Sophie Miller, I thought it was time we had a real conversation about custody arrangements." "Custody?" The word hits like a slap. "You think after what you've done?" "What I've done?" He steps closer, and for the first time, I see something ugly in his familiar face. "You're the one meeting with lawyers, making accusations. I'm a vice president at one of the largest tech companies in the country. Who do you think the courts will believe? The dedicated father with a stellar career, or the bitter housewife who gave up her job years ago?" My hands curl into fists. "You really want to do this? Fine. Let's talk about Rachel. Let's talk about the money you've been hiding. Let's talk about all of it, Daniel." Something flickers in his eyes. Uncertainty? Fear? But it's gone quickly, replaced by that smooth corporate confidence. "Careful, Layla. You're playing a game you can't win." "Watch me." I pull out my phone, showing him the screen. "I just recorded everything you said, and Sophie's already filing emergency custody papers based on your little stunt today. Still think I can't win?" He steps back, reassessing. I see the moment he realizes I'm not the same woman who used to defer to his every decision. "We could work this out," he says, softer now. "For Tommy's sake." "You're right about one thing," I reply, heading for the stairs. "This is about Tommy, and I'm not letting you use him as a pawn." I pause at the bottom step, turning back. "Oh, and Daniel, Rachel's not the only one who can play office politics. I wonder what the board would think about those creative accounting practices you've been using." His face pales, and I feel a fierce satisfaction as I climb the stairs to my son. The game has changed, and Daniel's about to learn I'm not playing by his rules anymore. Daniel's company laptop sits on our kitchen counter like a loaded gun. He forgot it this morning in his rush to leave, the first time in 15 years I've seen him make such a careless mistake. My hands hover over the keyboard, trembling. The password screen mocks me, but I know what to try. Tommy's adoption date. It works on the first attempt. My throat tightens as his email opens. Hundreds of messages from Rachel, dating back 18 months. I start with the oldest, watching their relationship unfold in reverse like a car crash in slow motion. "Got the presentation ready for tomorrow? Dinner after?" Becomes, "I miss the way you look at me." Becomes, "Last night was incredible." The front door clicks. I freeze, but it's only Tommy, home from his friend's house. "Mom, why are you using Dad's computer?" I close the laptop, forcing a smile. "Just checking some family photos, sweetie. How was Jason's?" He drops his backpack, frowning. "You're crying." I touch my cheek, surprised to find it wet. "Just allergies. Hey, want to order pizza?" My phone buzzes. "Sophie, emergency. Rachel just filed a harassment complaint against you at Daniel's company. Call me." The room spins. I send Tommy upstairs to do homework and dial Sophie with shaking fingers. "She's claiming you've been stalking her," Sophie says without preamble. "Threatening emails, phone calls. Daniel's backing her story." I laugh, a harsh sound that surprises us both. "I've never even spoken to her." "They've got evidence, Layla. Emails from your old account." The pieces click together. Daniel has access to my passwords, knows my old work email. He's been planning this, creating a paper trail. "He's trying to discredit me," I say. "Make me look unstable before I can expose the affair." "It's worse. The company's legal team is involved. If this sticks, it could affect your custody case." My fingers curl around Daniel's laptop. I have proof. Emails, receipts. "Don't touch that computer," Sophie cuts in sharply. "Accessing it without permission could be used against you. They're already painting you as vindictive and unstable. The front door opens again. This time it's Daniel, home early for once. He sees his laptop under my hands and stops. "Layla," he says quietly, warning in his voice. "What are you doing?" "I'll call you back," I tell Sophie, hanging up. Daniel moves closer, all corporate smoothness. "Accessing my work computer? That's a serious offense. The company takes cybersecurity very seriously." "Like they take harassment seriously?" The words burst out before I can stop them. "Tell me, Daniel, did Rachel help you forge those emails, or was that all your idea?" Something ugly flashes across his face. "I don't know what you're talking about, but if you're having emotional difficulties, maybe we should discuss adjusting Tommy's living arrangements. Don't you dare threaten me with our son." I stand, matching his tone. "I wondered why you pushed so hard for me to quit my job after the adoption. It wasn't about Tommy at all, was it? You wanted me dependent, isolated." He reaches for his laptop, but I snatch it away. "You're proving my point about your stability right now." "Mom?" Tommy's voice from the stairs makes us both freeze. "Dad? Why are you fighting?" Daniel's mask slips back into place. "Everything's fine, buddy. Mom's just feeling a little overwhelmed lately." I want to scream, to throw things, to tell Tommy everything. Instead, I set the laptop down carefully. "You're right. I am overwhelmed. Overwhelmed by how far someone will go to protect their lies." I grab my keys and purse, moving toward the door. Daniel catches my arm. "Where are you going?" I lean close, whispering so Tommy can't hear. "To see your father." Daniel's grip tightens painfully. "Jack? He's got nothing to do with this." "Really?" "Because he called me last week. Seems he has some interesting stories about your previous marriage, the one you never mentioned." The color drains from Daniel's face as I pull away. He knows he's lost this round, but I can see him already calculating his next move. "Tommy, grab your overnight bag," I call up the stairs. "We're having a sleepover at Aunt Sophie's." As we leave, I catch Daniel's reflection in the hallway mirror. For the first time, I see real fear in his eyes. Good. He should be afraid, because this isn't just about saving my reputation anymore. It's about making sure he never hurts anyone else the way he hurt us. Sophie's guest room feels like exile, but at least Tommy's finally asleep. I scroll through the photos on my phone, evidence I've been gathering. Daniel and Rachel at company events, standing too close. Credit card statements, hotel receipts. Each piece feels hollow now, useless against the narrative they've created. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. "We should talk. Coffee tomorrow? Rachel?" My fingers hover over the keypad. It's probably a trap, more ammunition for their harassment claims. But curiosity wins. "Where and when?" The response comes quickly. "Riverside Cafe, 10 a.m. Come alone." I find Rachel exactly where she said she'd be. Perfectly put together in her designer suit. She doesn't look like someone having an affair with my husband. She looks like someone who's won. "I'm recording this conversation," I say, sitting down. She smiles, pushing a manila envelope across the table. "So am I, but you'll want to see these first. Inside are more photos. Daniel with another woman, not Rachel. The timestamps show last week." "Her name's Christine," Rachel says, stirring her coffee. "She works in accounting. I found out about her 3 days ago." My laugh sounds strange, even to me. "Is this supposed to make us allies?" "This is supposed to make you smart," Rachel leans forward. "Daniel's being considered for chief operating officer. The board votes next month. A messy divorce, harassment allegations. It all works in his favor. Poor, successful executive, unstable wife making accusations. And you're telling me this out of kindness?" "I'm telling you because he promised me that position 2 months ago. Then I found these." She taps the envelope. "He's playing us both, Layla, and he's better at it than we thought." My phone buzzes. Sophie calling. I ignore it. "What do you want?" "The same thing you do. To watch him lose everything." Rachel pulls out another envelope. "These are records of irregular financial transactions. Nothing illegal, but questionable enough to make the board nervous, especially combined with his pattern of personal indiscretions." "Why should I trust you?" "Because I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to verify everything yourself. But quickly, before he destroys both our lives." My phone buzzes again. This time it's Daniel. "Tommy's school called. He never showed up this morning." The world stops. I dial Sophie's number with trembling fingers. "I've been trying to reach you," she says immediately. "Tommy's fine. He's with Jack." "Jack? How?" "Daniel's father picked him up. Said you asked him to." Sophie pauses. "Layla, there's something else. The harassment case against you? It's being dropped. All charges withdrawn." I look at Rachel, who's watching me with an unreadable expression. "I have to go," I tell Sophie, standing. Rachel catches my arm. "Remember what I said. You've got 48 hours before the board meets. After that, none of this matters." I drive to Jack's house in a daze, the envelopes from Rachel burning a hole in my bag. Tommy's playing video games when I arrive, happy and oblivious. Jack stands in his kitchen, looking exactly like Daniel will in 30 years. "I should have reached out sooner," he says, pouring coffee. "But Daniel, he's good at isolating people." "Why did you pick up Tommy?" "Because Daniel called his school pretending to be me. Said he had permission to take him out of state for a few days." Jack's hands shake slightly. "I still have friends at the school. They called to confirm." My coffee cup clatters against the saucer. "He was going to take Tommy? History repeats itself." Jack pulls out an old photo. Daniel as a child with a woman I've never seen. "His mother, my first wife. Daniel told you she died, right? The truth is, she left. He never forgave her, or me for letting her go." I think of the envelopes in my bag, of Rachel's warning, of all the pieces falling into place. "I need your help," I tell Jack. "But it has to be now. Today." He nods, understanding in his eyes. "What's the plan?" I pull out my phone, scrolling to Daniel's company directory. "First, we're going to call Christine from accounting. Then we're going to the board meeting. And Daniel, he's going to learn what it feels like to lose everything he thought he owned." Christine's hands shake as she slides the USB drive across Jack's kitchen table. Outside, the sun is setting, casting long shadows through the windows. Tommy's upstairs, still blissfully lost in his video games. "There's more than just the financial records," she says, voice barely above a whisper. "Daniel, he made promises to a lot of people, not just Rachel and me." Jack picks up the drive, turning it over in his weathered hands. "How many?" "5 that I know of. All women in positions to help his career." Christine wraps her arms around herself. "He told each of us we were special, that once he became COO." My laugh sounds hollow. "Let me guess. He'd leave his unstable wife. Start fresh?" She nods, unable to meet my eyes. "The board meeting's tomorrow morning. He's already started discrediting anyone who might speak against him." My phone buzzes. Daniel calling. Again. I silence it, but not before noticing the 17 missed calls. "He knows something's wrong," Jack says, watching me. He always could smell when he was losing control. The doorbell rings, making us all jump. Through the peephole, I see Rachel, looking less polished than this morning. When I open the door, I smell alcohol on her breath. "They fired me," she says, pushing past me. "Effective immediately. Professional misconduct." She spots Christine and laughs bitterly. "Well, isn't this cozy?" "Rachel," I start, but she cuts me off. "Don't! Just don't! You know what he told me? That you're mentally unstable, that you've been stalking all of us, creating fake evidence. The board believes him, Layla. They always believe him." Jack stands, his presence filling the room. "Not always. Not this time. Who are you?" "Someone who's watched Daniel destroy lives for 40 years. He holds up the USB drive. "And someone who still has friends on the board." My phone buzzes again, this time a text from Sophie. "Daniel just filed for emergency custody. Hearing tomorrow morning. Same time as the board meeting." The room spins. I grab the counter to steady myself, feeling the walls close in. He's forcing me to choose, Tommy or justice. "He planned this," I whisper. "All of it. The timing, the allegations, everything." "No," Jack says firmly. "I did." We all turn to stare at him. He looks older suddenly, tired but determined. "I leaked information about the custody hearing to Daniel's lawyer. Knew he'd jump at the chance." Jack meets my eyes. "Because while you're in court fighting for Tommy, I'll be at the board meeting. With Christine, and Rachel, and every other woman he's manipulated." "They won't believe you," Rachel says. "You're his estranged father." "They'll believe the evidence. And they'll believe this." He pulls out an old letter, yellowed with age. From his mother, explaining why she really left. How he threatened to destroy her if she tried to take him with her. My hands shake as I read the letter. The patterns, the manipulation, the calculated cruelty, it's all there, written decades ago. He's not just going to lose his job, Jack continues. He's going to lose everything. His reputation, his power, his ability to hurt anyone else. Why now? I ask. After all these years? Because you're the first person who fought back. The first one who made me believe we could stop him. Christine stands straighter, something hardening in her expression. I'll testify, whatever it costs. Me too, Rachel says quietly. Better to burn with him than let him keep doing this. My phone buzzes one final time. Daniel. Last chance, Layla. Drop everything now or you'll never see Tommy again. I look around the room at these women, all damaged by the same man. At Jack, carrying decades of guilt and regret. At the evidence that could destroy Daniel, and the custody hearing that could destroy me. No, I say, typing my response. You've got it backwards, Daniel. You're the one who's never going to see him again. I turn to Jack. The hearing's at 9. The board meets at 10. Let's make both count. For the first time since this started, I feel something beyond anger or fear. I feel powerful. Because tomorrow, Daniel learns what happens when you underestimate the women you've wronged. The courthouse bathroom mirror shows a woman I barely recognize. I straighten my blazer, checking my phone. 8:55, 5 minutes until the custody hearing. 65 minutes until the board meeting where Jack will destroy everything Daniel built. Sophie bursts in, face flushed. Daniel's lawyer just submitted new evidence. Photos of you meeting with Rachel and Christine. They're painting it as conspiracy, harassment. My hands grip the sink. He was following me? Private investigator. They're pushing for immediate sole custody, claiming you're unstable and vindictive. She pauses. There's more. They have Tommy's therapist ready to testify. The room tilts. Dr. Evans? But she has been seeing Daniel privately for months. She'll testify that Tommy's expressed fear of your erratic behavior. My phone buzzes. Jack. Christine backed out. Rachel too. He got to them. The words blur as tears threaten. I blink them back, remembering Tommy's face this morning as Sophie's sister took him to school. See you after court, Mom. Love you. We should postpone, Sophie says, watching me. Regroup. Gather more evidence. No. I delete Jack's message. That's what Daniel expects. He thinks he knows exactly how this plays out. The courtroom feels airless when we enter. Daniel sits with his lawyer, perfectly composed in his $1,000 suit. He doesn't look like someone about to lose everything. He looks like someone who's already won. The judge reviews the new evidence, her expression growing darker. Mrs. Thompson, these are serious allegations. Meeting with your husband's colleagues in secret, accessing private company information. Your Honor, Sophie starts, but Daniel's lawyer interrupts. We have testimony from multiple witnesses about Mrs. Thompson's escalating behavior. The private investigator's photos show... The courtroom door opens. Jack walks in, followed by a woman I've never seen. She's in her 60s, elegant despite obvious tension. Daniel stands abruptly. Mother? The judge frowns. Who is this? Margaret Thompson, Your Honor. Jack's voice carries authority I've never heard before. Daniel's mother, the one he told everyone was dead. Daniel's lawyer scrambles. This is irrelevant to the custody. I have documentation, Margaret says, placing a folder on the judge's desk. Of a pattern of behavior that started when Daniel was 12. Of manipulation. Of turning family members against each other, including his current attempts to alienate his son from his mother. Objection! Daniel's lawyer shouts, but Daniel himself remains frozen, staring at the mother he claimed was dead. The therapist, I say suddenly understanding. Dr. Evans, you were her patient too, weren't you? Margaret nods. 15 years ago, when Daniel first started his pattern with other women, she helped him convince the courts I was unfit. Your Honor, Sophie interjects, we request a recess to review this new evidence. The judge studies Margaret's documents, then looks at Daniel. His perfect facade is cracking, showing something ugly underneath. Request granted. 1 hour recess. She fixes Daniel with a hard stare. And I'm calling Dr. Evans to testify about her prior relationship with this family. Daniel moves toward his mother, but Jack steps between them. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, son. Better hurry if you want to save anything. You think this changes anything? Daniel's voice is low, dangerous. I still have Tommy's testimony, his fear of his unstable mother. Once the judge hears, "Tommy," I cut in, feeling strength return. "Why don't we ask him ourselves?" The courtroom door opens again. Sophie's sister enters with Tommy. He runs to me but stops when he sees Daniel. "Dad?" Tommy's voice trembles. "Why did you tell Dr. Evans those things about Mom?" "They weren't true." Daniel's face goes white. "Tommy, you don't understand." "I recorded it," Tommy says, "on my phone, like Mom taught me to do when something feels wrong." He pulls out his phone, hands it to Sophie. "I didn't want to help you hurt her." In that moment, watching Daniel's perfect world crumble, I feel no satisfaction. Only sadness for the boy watching his father's true nature emerge. "The board meeting starts soon," I tell Daniel quietly. "Better hurry, though I doubt they'll believe anything you say now." He leaves without another word, but his mother stays. Together, we watch him walk away, his shoulders bent under the weight of his own lies. The judge returns, and I hold Tommy close as Sophie presents his recording. Sometimes I realize the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about letting them destroy themselves. The boardroom doors slam open as Daniel storms in, 30 minutes late and coming undone at the seams. His perfect hair is disheveled, his tie askew. The board members stare, unused to seeing their polished vice president so rattled. "This meeting is private," he snaps, then freezes when he sees me sitting beside Jack. "Actually," the board chairman says, "Mrs. Thompson was just sharing some fascinating information about company finances." I slide the USB drive across the gleaming table. "Christine from accounting sends her regards." Daniel lunges for it, but Jack blocks his path. "Sit down, son. For once in your life, face what you've done." "You have no right to be here," Daniel snarls. "Either of you. This is corporate harassment." "Like the harassment complaints you manufactured against your wife?" The chairman's voice cuts through Daniel's protests. "Or the multiple affairs with employees? The misappropriated funds? These are lies. Clearly my unstable wife is perfectly stable," Margaret says, entering the room. The board members murmur as she takes her seat. "As the court determined 20 minutes ago when they granted her full custody." Daniel's facade cracks completely. He whirls on me, mask gone, revealing something dark and desperate. "You planned this, all of it. Turn my own parents against me." "No, Daniel." I keep my voice steady. "You did that yourself. Just like you turned Tommy against you when you tried to use him to hurt me." "Tommy?" His laugh is harsh. "He's not even our real son. We bought him, like everything else in our perfect little life." The room goes deadly quiet. I stand slowly, feeling everyone's eyes on us. "That's where you're wrong. Tommy was never bought. He was loved. Something you never understood about either of us." "Mrs. Thompson," the chairman interrupts, "please continue with the financial evidence." I shake my head. "You don't need me for that. Rachel and Christine are waiting outside. They'll tell you everything about the manipulation, the promises, the threats. I'm done here." "You can't leave," Daniel says, desperation creeping into his voice. "You wanted revenge. Well, congratulations. You've ruined me. At least stay to watch." "That's the difference between us, Daniel. I never wanted revenge. I wanted justice. For Tommy. For your mother. For every woman you used and discarded." I gather my things, suddenly tired. "The rest is up to the board." "Security will escort you out, Mr. Thompson," the chairman says. "Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. The police will want to discuss the financial irregularities." Daniel stands there, power draining away like water, as 2 security guards enter. "You'll regret this," he says, but his voice holds no power anymore. "All of you." "No," Jack says quietly. "The only regret here is that I didn't stop you sooner." I walk out before the guards reach Daniel, Margaret, and Jack following. In the hallway, Rachel and Christine wait with their own stories, their own evidence. They nod as I pass, understanding in their eyes. My phone buzzes. "Sophie. Tommy's asking for you, says he wants ice cream." I smile, remembering that family dinner that feels like a lifetime ago. The night I first saw Daniel's text from Rachel. The night everything changed. "Mom?" I turn. Daniel stands between the security guards, his perfect suit wrinkled, his empire crumbling. For a moment, I see the man I married, the father Tommy loved. Then it's gone, replaced by what was always there beneath the surface. "It wasn't supposed to end like this," he says. "No," I agree. It was supposed to end with you destroying everyone who loved you. Like always. I did love you. Once. No, Daniel. You loved what we represented. The perfect wife, the perfect son, the perfect life. But real love? That requires truth. The guards lead him away, and Margaret touches my arm. Ice cream sounds wonderful, she says. Think there's room for a grandmother at that table? I look at her. At Jack. At the family emerging from the ashes of Daniel's lies. There's always room for truth, I say. And new beginnings. As we leave, I hear Daniel's voice echo down the corridor, making threats, promises, excuses. But his words have no power anymore. The truth has set us all free. The envelope arrives on a Tuesday bearing the prison's return address. I recognize Daniel's handwriting immediately. Precise, controlled, just like he used to be. The letter sits unopened on my desk while I review contracts for my new marketing consultancy. Tommy bursts in, brandishing his science project. Mom, we won first place! I pull him close, breathing in the scent of his shampoo and victory. Of course you did. Want to celebrate with Grandma Margaret and Grandpa Jack tonight? Can we get ice cream after? Always ice cream after, I say, and he runs off to call them. The letter catches my eye again. 3 months since Daniel's sentencing for financial fraud. 6 months since the divorce. The unopened envelope holds his latest attempt at... What? Reconciliation? Manipulation? The old me would have torn it open immediately, desperate to understand. My phone buzzes. Rachel. Thought you should know. Christine got the promotion. Head of Financial Operations. The board's really turning things around. I smile, remembering Christine's testimony that helped put Daniel away. Sometimes Justice wears a pencil skirt and carries an accounting degree. The doorbell rings. Sophie enters without waiting, legal papers in hand. Final settlement documents. Once you sign, everything's done. I take the papers but don't sign immediately. Have you heard from Dr. Evans? She surrendered her license. Turns out Daniel wasn't her only ethical violation. Sophie notices the letter. From him? Haven't decided if I'm reading it. She sits across from me. Whatever's in there, it doesn't change anything. I know. I pick up the envelope, feeling its weight. But maybe I need to read it. Not for him. For me. The letter is shorter than I expected. Layla, they say, write what you know is true. Here's what I know. I destroyed everything good in my life because I couldn't stand that it was real. Tommy's love, your strength, my parents' hope for redemption. I made everyone feel crazy because I was terrified of my own madness. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But Tommy should know something true about his father, so here it is. I loved him. Not well, not right, but I did. And you loved him better than I ever could. Daniel. Sophie watches me fold the letter. You okay? Better than okay. I sign the settlement papers with steady hands. I used to think revenge would feel like winning, but this feels like something else. Freedom? Peace. Tommy's voice carries from the kitchen, laughing with Jack on the phone about ice cream flavors. Margaret's wind chimes, a housewarming gift for our new home, tinkle in the breeze through the open window. I stand, dropping Daniel's letter in the shredder. Coming to dinner? Tommy's science project won first place. Wouldn't miss it. Sophie gathers the signed papers. You know, when you first called me about Daniel's text messages, I never imagined we'd end up here. Neither did I. I grab my keys, hearing Tommy thunder down the stairs. I thought I was fighting to destroy Daniel. Turns out I was fighting to save myself. Mom! Tommy calls. Grandpa Jack says he's bringing that weird ice cream with the coffee in it. Tell him you're too young for coffee ice cream. But Mom! I catch my reflection in the window, no longer the desperate woman who discovered her husband's betrayal over dinner. Something stronger has emerged from those ashes. The shredded pieces of Daniel's letter scatter in the wastebasket. Maybe he meant every word. Maybe it's another manipulation. It doesn't matter anymore. The truth isn't in his words. It's in the family waiting at the ice cream shop, in Tommy's laughter, in the career I'm rebuilding, in the peace I've found. Ready? Sophie asks. I lock my office, leaving the past behind. Ready? Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying your enemy. It's in building something beautiful from the wreckage they left behind. Something true. Tommy races ahead to the car, already debating ice cream flavors with himself. I follow more slowly, savoring each step toward our future. The wind chimes sing their gentle song, and I think, this is what freedom sounds like. This is what truth feels like. This is what winning really means.
I stood in my driveway, keys dangling from my fingertips, staring at the unfamiliar Mercedes taking up half my garage space. 2 matching leather suitcases sat neatly by the front door, their presence as unwelcome as a funeral invitation. I'm Marley, and this was the moment my carefully balanced life began its spectacular nosedive. Surprise! Linda's voice carried through the open door, sweet as artificial sweetener. We thought it was time for an extended visit. My stomach clenched. Extended. Such a carefully chosen word. I stepped inside to find my husband Greg performing his best impression of a guilty teenager, hands shoved deep in his pockets, shoulders hunched. Behind him, his father Derek stood ramrod straight in my living room, already eyeing the family photos on the wall like they offended his military sensibilities. How unexpected, I managed, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Greg didn't mention you were coming. Sometimes the best surprises come unannounced, Derek said, his voice carrying that familiar note of authority that always made Greg shrink 2 inches shorter. Besides, we thought it was time to assess the situation. The situation. My mother, Ella, who'd been living with us since Dad died, appeared in the hallway. Her face went pale at the sight of Derek and Linda. She clutched her cardigan closer, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when she felt threatened. I need to check on dinner, she murmured, retreating to the kitchen like a shadow. Greg finally found his voice. Dad thinks it would be good for everyone if they stayed with us for a while. Help us get things organized. I caught the slight tremor in his words, the way his eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. There was more to this story, something hiding behind his careful phrasing. Organized? The word tasted bitter. I wasn't aware we needed organizing. Linda bustled forward, her perfectly manicured hands fluttering like nervous birds. Oh, we just want to help. And with Ella here, we thought you could use the extra support. The implication hung in the air like smoke. I watched Derek's jaw tighten at the mention of my mother's name. He'd never approved of her moving in, had made that crystal clear at every family gathering. The guest room isn't prepared, I said, knowing full well it was currently storing my mother's belongings that wouldn't fit in her room. No matter, Derek replied, already moving toward the stairs. We can sort that out. Greg, bring up our bags. Greg jumped to attention like a well-trained puppy, grabbing the suitcases before I could protest further. I followed him to the bottom of the stairs, grabbing his arm. When were you planning to tell me about this? I hissed. He wouldn't meet my eyes. They needed a place to stay. Dad's been... There are some financial issues. It's temporary. Temporary like my mother's temporary stay? I released his arm, disgust rising in my throat. You should have talked to me first. I knew you'd say no. You're damn right I would have said no. This is our home, Greg, mine and yours, not your father's new command center. From upstairs came the sound of Derek's voice, sharp with disapproval. Greg! These bags won't move themselves. I watched my husband's face crumple slightly before he straightened his shoulders and headed upstairs, leaving me alone in the foyer. From the kitchen came the soft sounds of my mother's movements, the gentle clink of dishes that told me she was stress cooking, her way of coping with chaos. I pressed my fingers against my temples, feeling a headache building. This wasn't just an invasion of space, it was a power play. Derek Collins didn't do anything without a purpose, and showing up unannounced with luggage in tow wasn't just about financial issues. The question was, what game was he really playing? And more importantly, how many pieces of my life would be sacrificed before it was over? 3 days into the invasion, I found my mother's prized ceramic vase, the last gift from my father, wrapped in newspaper and stuffed in a box labeled donations. The sound of Derek's boots on the hardwood floor had become a constant reminder of his presence, like a metronome counting down to my inevitable explosion. He rounded the corner into the living room, clipboard in hand, looking every bit the retired colonel conducting an inspection. Ah, Marley. Good. We need to discuss the new household schedule. He tapped his pen against the clipboard. Your mother's tendency to cook at irregular hours is disrupting the natural order of things. I clutched the vase tighter. The natural order of whose things, exactly? Structure breeds success, he continued, ignoring my question. Linda and I have drafted a weekly menu plan. Your mother can assist, of course, under Linda's supervision. The vase trembled in my hands. In the kitchen, I could hear the quiet murmur of voices. My mother and Linda, probably engaged in another passive-aggressive dance over dinner preparations. My mother doesn't need supervision in her own kitchen. Derek's jaw tightened. This arrangement requires compromise. Greg agrees the changes will benefit everyone. Of course he did. Greg hadn't disagreed with his father since puberty. Speaking of my spineless husband, he chose that moment to appear, laptop tucked under his arm. Hey, what's going on? His eyes darted between us, sensing tension. Your father's reorganizing our lives, I said, setting the vase deliberately on its original shelf. Apparently, my mother's cooking schedule is chaos incarnate. It's about efficiency, Derek interjected. And speaking of efficiency, these decorative items are taking up valuable space. The donation box? Touch this vase again, and efficiency will be the least of your concerns. Greg stepped forward. Marley, maybe we could... Could what, Greg? Rearrange our entire lives to accommodate your father's control issues? That's enough. Derek's voice carried the weight of decades of command. Greg, your wife's attitude is... My attitude? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut glass. You show up unannounced, commandeer our home, and now you're trying to erase every trace of my mother's presence. And you're concerned about my attitude? A crash from the kitchen silenced us all. I found my mother standing over a shattered plate, her hands shaking. Linda hovered nearby, looking both concerned and somehow satisfied. I'm so sorry, my mother whispered. My hands, I just can't seem to... It's fine, Mom. I moved to help her, but Derek blocked my path. Linda, show Ella how to clean this properly. There's a specific protocol for broken glass. My mother's face crumpled slightly. 25 years of teaching experience, and this man was treating her like an incompetent child. I'll help my mother, I said, pushing past him. Actually, Greg spoke up, his voice carrying a tremor of attempted authority. Maybe Dad's right. We could all use more structure. The betrayal felt like ice water in my veins. I turned to face my husband, really seeing him for the first time in years. Structure? Is that what we're calling this? Marley. No. I grabbed the broom myself, positioning myself between my mother and the others. This ends now. Mom, go rest. I've got this. But the dinner schedule, Linda started. We'll have to wait, I finished, sweeping the broken pieces into a neat pile. In fact, everything's going to wait until we have a real conversation about boundaries. Derek's face darkened. Greg, your wife clearly needs... Stop telling my husband what I need. The words came out quiet but sharp. And stop trying to remake this house into your personal barracks. The silence that followed was deafening. Greg looked like he wanted to dissolve into the wallpaper. Linda's hands twisted her apron. Derek stood perfectly still, his authority challenged in a way he clearly hadn't expected. We'll discuss this later, he finally said, turning on his heel and marching upstairs. I watched him go, then looked at the broken pieces at my feet. Something else had shattered today, something far more significant than a dinner plate. In the reflection of the window, I caught sight of my mother's retreating form, shoulders hunched, moving like a ghost in her own home. The rage that had been simmering for days crystallized into something colder, more focused. This wasn't just about territory anymore. This was about dignity. And if Derek Collins wanted a war, he was about to learn that not all battles are won with military precision. The bank statement sat on my desk like a loaded gun. 3 separate transfers to Derek and Linda's account over the past month, each for $5,000. The numbers blurred as my hands shook, rage and betrayal mixing into something toxic in my chest. I found Greg in his home office, headphones on, deliberately avoiding the world he'd helped create. I slapped the statement down in front of his keyboard. $15,000, Greg. Want to explain? His face went pale, then red. He pulled off his headphones slowly, like a man preparing for his execution. You weren't supposed to see that. Clearly, just like I wasn't supposed to see your parents showing up on our doorstep. Just like I wasn't supposed to notice our savings disappearing. They needed help. While my mother's medication sits in pharmacy limbo because we suddenly can't afford the copay, he pushed back from his desk, running his hands through his hair. Dad made some investments that didn't pan out. They were going to lose their house. So you decided to sacrifice ours instead? It's not that simple. It never is with you, Greg. Nothing's ever simple when it comes to standing up to Daddy dearest. A sound from the doorway made us both turn. Derek stood there, his presence filling the frame like a shadow at noon. Is there a problem here? Yes, I said, before Greg could speak. There's definitely a problem. Would you like to explain why my husband's been secretly bankrolling you? Derek's jaw tightened. Financial matters between father and son. Stop. My voice cut through his practiced authority. This isn't a military operation. This is my home, my marriage, and my money you're bleeding dry. Marley, please. Greg stood up, reaching for me. Dad's just going through a rough patch. A rough patch that requires $15,000 of our money? Money we don't have? The market will turn around, Derek said, his confidence wavering slightly. My investments were garbage, I finished. I checked, Derek. Those sure things you invested in? They were pump and dump schemes. You got played. The color drained from his face. Behind him, Linda appeared, drawn by the rising voices. Derek! What's she talking about? Nothing you need to concern yourself with, he snapped. Everything, I corrected, turning to Linda. Your husband lost everything on fake investments, and now he's draining our accounts to cover it up. Greg grabbed my arm. That's enough! I yanked away from him, something final snapping inside me. No, it's not nearly enough. Your father shows up here, takes over our home, terrorizes my mother, and all while secretly stealing our money through you, and you let him. I had no choice. You always had a choice. You just chose him. Every single time. Derek stepped forward, authority crackling around him like static. You're being hysterical. And you're being a fraud, I shot back. A fraud who's been living off his son's weakness because he can't admit he failed. The slap of Derek's hand on the desk made everyone jump. You will not speak to me that way in your what? I stepped closer, matching his intensity. Your house? Your command? This isn't your anything, Derek. This is my home, and you're not in charge here. Linda's voice came soft but clear. How much did we take? Derek turned on her. Linda, be quiet. No. She straightened her spine. How much of their money did you give away, Greg? Greg looked at his father, then at me, trapped between loyalties. Almost everything, he whispered. The savings, most of our emergency fund. The silence that followed felt like glass about to shatter. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing familiar skin. Pack your things, I said quietly. Marley, all of you, pack your things. You have until tomorrow. You can't just, Derek started. I can, I will. And if you're not gone by tomorrow, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what happened to the great Colonel Collins' retirement fund. I'm sure your military buddies would love to hear that story. I turned and walked out, leaving them in Greg's office. My mother stood in the hallway, tears in her eyes, but her head held high. I took her hand, squeezing it gently. We'll be okay, Mom. Behind us, I could hear Derek's voice rising, Greg's protests, Linda's quiet sobs. But they felt distant now, like a storm moving away. I had my own weather to weather, and it was time to clean house. The emergency room lights cast harsh shadows across my mother's face as she lay unconscious on the gurney. Her collapse during breakfast had shattered more than just the coffee mug she'd been holding. It had shattered any illusion that I could maintain peace at the cost of her health. Blood pressure's still elevated, the nurse said, adjusting monitors. Has she been under unusual stress lately? I stared at the IV drip, counting the seconds between drops. You could say that. Greg appeared in the doorway, his father's shadow close behind him. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. "How is she?" Greg asked, keeping his distance. "Like you care." The words came out sharp enough to draw blood. "Where were you when she was having anxiety attacks over your father's daily inspections? When she stopped eating because Linda kept criticizing her cooking?" Derek stepped forward. "Now, see here. Get out!" My voice was low, dangerous. "Both of you." "She's my mother-in-law," Derek said, as if that gave him some claim. "As the head of the family." A laugh escaped me, bitter as medicine. "Head of the family? You can't even head yourself to the door without destroying everything in your path." The nurse looked between us, sensing the tension. "Perhaps we should keep things calm for the patient's sake." I moved closer to my mother's bed, positioning myself between her and them. They were just leaving. Greg took a half step forward. "Marley, please, we can work this out." "Like we worked out the finances? Or maybe like we worked out your parents moving in without consulting me?" I pulled out my phone, showing him the screen. "Or perhaps like we worked out this email I found, where your father demanded you transfer more money last week." The color drained from Greg's face. Behind him, Derek went still. "That was a private conversation," Derek said. "Private like the conversation we should have had before you bankrupted us?" I turned to Greg. "Or private like the conversation we should have had before you chose your father over your wife?" "I didn't choose. You did. Every single time." I looked at my mother's pale face, then back at them. And now she's paying the price. A doctor entered, flipping through charts. "Mrs. Thompson, we need to discuss your mother's condition." "Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of family," Derek started. "No," I cut him off. "You're not family. You're parasites wearing family's skin." I turned to the doctor. They were leaving. Greg reached for my hand. "Marley," I jerked away. "The next hand you reach for better be a lawyer's, Greg, because this is done." "You don't mean that," he whispered. "Check your email. The divorce papers are already there." I watched his face crumple, feeling nothing but cold clarity. "I filed them this morning, right after I transferred what little money was left to a new account. One you can't access." Derek's authoritative mask slipped, revealing the panic beneath. "You had no right." "I had every right, just like I had every right to send copies of your investment schemes to your military pension board." I smiled, and it felt like baring teeth. "They seemed very interested in your financial activities." The monitor tracking my mother's heartbeat beeped steadily, the only sound in the sudden silence. Greg looked destroyed, Derek looked dangerous, and I felt more alive than I had in months. "You'll regret this," Derek said, his voice thick with threat. "No, I won't. But you will." I turned my back on them, taking my mother's hand. "Now get out before I call security and tell them exactly why my mother's in this bed." Their footsteps retreated, leaving behind the antiseptic smell of hospital air and the weight of decisions that couldn't be unmade. The doctor waited until they were gone before speaking. "Your mother's condition is stress-induced, but there might be underlying factors we need to address." I nodded, watching my mother's chest rise and fall. Each breath seemed like an accusation against my previous inaction, against every time I'd chosen peace over protection. "Whatever she needs," I said. "I'm done letting other people decide what's best for my family." The doctor made notes in her chart, and I sat in the hard plastic chair, planning our next moves. The house would need to be sold. Derek and Greg had seen to that with their financial drain, but maybe that was fitting. Some foundations couldn't be repaired once they'd been poisoned at the root. My mother stirred slightly, her hand tightening in mine. I squeezed back, a promise in the pressure. We'd rebuild, just the two of us. And this time, no one else would hold the blueprints to our lives. The manila envelope sat heavy in my hands as I stood outside Derek's temporary office, my former guest room. Inside were printouts of emails, bank statements, and investment records that painted a picture so damning it made my hands shake. 3 days of digging through financial records had revealed the true extent of Derek's failures. I knocked once, not waiting for a response before entering. Derek looked up from his laptop, his face hardening at my presence. "This is a private space." "Nothing's private anymore." I dropped the envelope on his desk. especially not your investment history. He didn't touch it. You've been investigating me. Someone had to, since Greg wouldn't. I leaned forward, placing my palms flat on the desk. Tell me, does Linda know about the second mortgage? Or the gambling debts? A muscle twitched in his jaw. You're overstepping, like you overstepped when you lost your pension playing the market? Or when you convinced Greg to drain our savings to cover your mistakes? You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I pulled out one particular document. This is interesting. A loan application in Greg's name, with a forged signature. That's fraud, Derek. Federal fraud. His hand moved toward the paper, but I snatched it back. What do you want? You gone. All of you. Tonight. A harsh laugh escaped him. Or what? You'll destroy your husband's life by reporting this? He's as complicit as I am. The difference is, I don't care about saving his life anymore. My voice remained steady, even as my heart raced. But you care about yours, don't you, about your reputation? The door opened behind me. Greg stood there, Linda hovering behind him. Perfect timing. What's going on? Greg asked, stepping inside. Show them, I said to Derek. Show them what you've been hiding, or I will. Derek's face flushed red. This is blackmail. This is consequence. I turned to Linda. Did you know your house isn't yours anymore? That Derek remortgaged it to cover his gambling debts? Linda's hand flew to her throat. Derek? He lost everything, I continued, pulling out more documents. The pension, the savings, your retirement fund. Then he came here to bleed us dry, too. Greg moved forward, reaching for the papers. Dad, what is she talking about? Your father forged your signature on loan documents, I said, watching Derek's facade crack. He's been using your identity to secure more credit. That's why he really came here, to hide from his creditors. The silence that followed felt like glass breaking in slow motion. Linda sank into a chair, her face ashen. Greg stared at his father, waiting for a denial that didn't come. I was protecting this family, Derek finally said, his voice hollow. Everything I did was for yourself, Linda whispered. All these years, telling me we needed to be careful with money, while you... I placed the envelope in front of her. Everything's there. Bank statements, loan documents, gambling receipts. He's been lying to all of you for years. Derek stood suddenly, his chair scraping back. You have no right. I have every right. The force of my voice made them all jump. You came into my home, terrorized my mother, drained our accounts, and now you want to talk about rights? Greg picked up one of the documents, his hands shaking. You forged my signature? My own father? Son, I can explain. Explain what? I cut in. How you manipulated him his entire life. How you used his fear of disappointing you to destroy his marriage. Derek moved toward me, but I stood my ground. You think you've won something here? You've destroyed your own family. No, you did that all on your own. I pulled out my phone. You have 2 hours to pack and leave. After that, these documents go to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. I'm sure they'd love to hear about a retired colonel's fraud scheme. You wouldn't dare... Try me. I turned to Greg and Linda. You can go with him, or you can stay and face what he's done. Your choice. I walked out, leaving them with the evidence of their collapsing world. In the hallway, my mother stood waiting, stronger now, her eyes clear and determined. Are you sure about this? She asked softly. I took her hand, feeling the strength in her grip. Some cancers need to be cut out completely, even if it leaves a scar. The sound of raised voices filtered through the door behind us, Derek's authority crumbling, Linda's sobs, Greg's accusations. The house of cards was finally falling, and I had knocked down the first domino. Now we would see who remained standing in the wreckage. 2 hours passed like a death sentence. I sat in the kitchen, watching the clock tick down while chaos erupted upstairs, drawers slamming, voices rising and falling like a tide of accusations. My mother's hand rested on my shoulder, steady despite everything. The first police car arrived exactly when I'd planned. You actually did it, Greg said from the doorway, his voice hollow. You called them. No. I stood, straightening my spine. Your father's creditors did. Amazing how quickly they move when they learn where to find him. A second patrol car pulled up. Through the window, I watched Derek emerge from the house, his military bearing crumbling as officers approached. Linda followed, clutching her purse like a shield. He's still my father, Greg whispered, and she's still my mother. I gestured to Ella, who hadn't left my side. The difference is, I chose to protect mine. The doorbell rang. Greg moved to answer it, but I stopped him. They're here for you too. His face went pale. What? Your signature is on those loan documents, forged or not. You're complicit. The words tasted like ash. I tried to warn you. You're destroying everything. No. My fist slammed the counter. You destroyed everything when you chose him over us, when you let him drain our accounts, terrorize my mother, and steal our future. The doorbell rang again, more insistent. Mrs. Thompson, a voice called. Federal agents, we need to speak with Gregory Thompson. Greg's eyes darted between me and the door like a trapped animal. Marley, please, we can fix this. Some things can't be fixed. I moved toward the door. Some things can only be burned down and rebuilt. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Greg lunged for the back door just as federal agents entered through the front. Derek's voice boomed from outside, demanding to speak to his son. Linda's sobs carried through the open windows. I watched them lead Greg away in handcuffs, his head bowed, finally free of his father's shadow, but bound by its consequences. Derek was already in the back of a patrol car, his authority stripped away with his freedom. You didn't tell me about Greg, my mother said softly. I couldn't. My voice cracked. If I had, you would have asked me to show mercy, and I couldn't afford mercy anymore. Linda appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. How could you do this to your own family? Family, I laughed, the sound sharp as broken glass. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't force someone into the hospital with stress. Family doesn't forge signatures or gamble away futures. They'll go to prison. They should have thought of that before they committed fraud. She stepped closer, desperation in her eyes. Greg was just trying to help his father. And who was trying to help us? I gestured around the kitchen, where bills lay scattered like fallen leaves. Who was thinking about my mother when Derek was terrorizing her? Who was considering our future when they were draining our accounts? The agents returned, requesting statements. Linda retreated to the porch, broken and alone. My mother squeezed my hand before going upstairs, leaving me to face the aftermath of my choices. Hours later, after the statements were taken and the cars had gone, I stood in my empty kitchen. The house felt haunted by the ghosts of what we'd lost. My marriage, Greg's freedom, the illusion of family we'd maintained for so long. My phone buzzed with messages from Greg's relatives, each one more accusatory than the last. I deleted them all without reading. The local news would have the story by morning. Respected military officer and son arrested for fraud. Our name would be mud in this town. Was it worth it? My mother asked, appearing beside me. I stared at the empty driveway where Derek's Mercedes had sat just hours ago. Ask me tomorrow. She touched my cheek, wiping away tears I hadn't realized were falling. Sometimes protecting what we love means losing what we thought we couldn't live without. I nodded, unable to speak. The victory I'd imagined felt hollow, tainted by the cost. I'd won the war, but lost pieces of myself in the battle. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, paperwork, and the long process of rebuilding from the ashes of what we'd been. But tonight, in the quiet aftermath of destruction, I wondered if revenge and justice were really the same thing after all. The visiting room at the county jail smelled of despair and industrial cleaner. I sat across from Greg, the scratched plexiglass between us reflecting our fractured reality. His orange jumpsuit made him look smaller, diminished without his father's shadow looming over him. Linda came to see me yesterday, he said into the phone receiver. She told me what she did. I leaned forward. What are you talking about? The money she's been hiding from Dad. All these years, she was squirreling away cash, preparing for... He trailed off, looking down. She wants to make it right. A knock on the window interrupted us. Linda stood in the doorway, clutching her familiar purse. The guard let her in, and she took the seat next to Greg, her hands trembling as she lifted another receiver. "I should have stopped him years ago," she said, her voice thin through the phone. "I knew what Derek was doing, how he controlled everything, everyone. I was a coward." "Linda." She reached into her purse, pulling out a thick envelope. $200,000. I've been saving it since Greg was in high school. Every time Derek made a bad investment or took control of our accounts, I skimmed a little off the top, just in case. Greg stared at his mother like he'd never seen her before. "Mom? I watched him break you down," she continued, looking at her son. "Made you think you needed his approval to breathe. And then I watched him try to do the same thing to your wife, to your home." She slid the envelope through the transfer slot. "This won't fix everything, but it might help rebuild what Derek destroyed." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Bank statements, account numbers, transfer instructions, everything needed to access her secret fund. "Why now?" I asked. "Because you did what I never could." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "You stood up to him. You protected your mother while I failed to protect my son." Greg pressed his hand against the plexiglass. "Mom, you didn't fail." "I did." Her voice cracked. "I let him mold you into his shadow, let him convince you that love meant blind obedience, and when he started destroying your marriage, I stayed silent again." I stared at the envelope, feeling the weight of years of silent rebellion in my hands. "Derek doesn't know about this money?" Linda's laugh was bitter. "Derek never thought I was smart enough to manage money. Never questioned why I insisted on keeping my nursing job part-time, even after retirement. He was too busy playing soldier with other people's lives to notice his own wife's rebellion." A guard approached, signaling our time was almost up. "Take it," Linda urged. "Use it to rebuild, to protect your mother the way I should have protected my family." Greg's face contorted with emotion. "Marley, I know I don't deserve forgiveness." "No," I cut him off. "You don't. But maybe you deserve the chance to learn from your mother's example, to understand that real strength isn't in control or power." Linda stood, her spine straight for the first time since I'd known her. "I'm filing for divorce. Derek can face his consequences alone." I clutched the envelope, feeling the strange weight of unexpected alliance. "What will you do?" "Start over, like you're doing." She touched the glass separating her from her son. "Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we've been wrong and try to make it right." Greg pressed his hand against his mother's through the barrier. "I'm sorry, Mom, for not seeing what he was doing to all of us." The guard stepped forward again, more insistent. I stood, holding Linda's gaze. "This doesn't erase what happened." "No," she agreed, "but maybe it helps build something new from the ashes." As we left Greg behind, Linda and I walked through the prison corridors in silence. The money in my bag felt like a torch, burning away the last vestiges of Derek's control over both our lives. Outside, in the harsh sunlight, Linda turned to me. "I know it's too late to be the mother-in-law you deserved, but maybe we can be something else. Something stronger." I thought of my own mother waiting at home, of the strength it takes to protect what matters. Maybe we can. The future stretched before us, uncertain but free from the shadows that had darkened our lives for so long. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected sources, and redemption wears faces we never thought to trust. The last box from Greg's office sat on our doorstep, a final punctuation mark on our marriage. Inside, I found his coffee mug from our honeymoon, a photo of us in happier times, and a letter I wasn't ready to read. My mother worked in her garden, the morning sun catching silver in her hair. She looked stronger now, her hands steady as she planted new roses where Derek's Mercedes had once leaked oil on our driveway. The doorbell rang. Linda stood there, holding a casserole dish like a peace offering. "Old habits," she said with a small smile. "Though I made this one myself, no supervision required." We sat in the kitchen, the same space where Derek had once tried to impose his military precision on our lives. Now it felt lighter, as if the house itself could breathe again. "Greg's sentencing is next week," Linda said, stirring her tea. "Derek's already serving his time. I know." I pushed Greg's letter across the table, still unopened. "He keeps writing." Linda nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Sometimes the hardest part of standing up for yourself is staying standing when they try to pull you back down." Through the window, I watched my mother tend to her roses, remembering how she used to flinch at sudden noises, how she'd made herself smaller to avoid Derek's criticism. "I used to think revenge would feel better than this," I admitted. "More final. Justice rarely feels the way we expect." Linda touched the envelope. "Greg's learning that too, the hard way." "Are you still going through with the divorce?" She straightened her spine, echoing the strength I'd seen growing in her since that day in the prison. "Derek's actions were his choice. My freedom is mine." The sound of laughter drifted through the window, my mother talking to someone. We both looked out to see her chatting with our neighbor, her gestures animated as she discussed her gardening. No fear, no hesitation. "Sometimes I wonder if I went too far," I said quietly. "If there was another way." "There's always another way." Linda's voice was gentle but firm. "But sometimes the path we choose isn't about finding the best way. It's about finding the way that lets us live with ourselves afterward." I finally picked up Greg's letter, feeling its weight. He wants to make amends. Do you want him to? The question hung in the air between us. Outside, my mother's roses turned their faces to the sun, growing despite the soil's memory of concrete and oil. "I want him to understand," I said finally. "Not just apologize, really understand what it means to choose yourself over someone else's control." Linda reached across the table, her hand covering mine. "Then maybe that's your real victory. Not the revenge, not even the justice, the understanding." I opened the letter, Greg's familiar handwriting spilling across the page, but instead of reading it, I stood and walked to the garden. My mother looked up as I approached, her smile genuine and unguarded. "Linda brought lunch," I said, holding up the letter. "And Greg sent one more message." My mother patted the earth around a new rose bush. "Are you ready to read it?" I looked at the letter, then at the garden where Derek's authority had once cast shadows. The roses were already reaching higher than his Mercedes had stood. "No," I said, and felt the truth of it settle into my bones. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." I tucked the letter into my pocket, unread. Some chapters didn't need a final word to be finished. Some victories weren't about winning or losing, but about choosing when to stop fighting. My mother nodded, understanding without words. She handed me a trowel, and together we turned the soil where Linda's car now sat in our driveway, making space for new growth. Behind us, Linda appeared with gardening gloves, ready to help plant whatever came next. 3 women who had learned that sometimes family isn't about blood or marriage, but about who stands with you in the garden after the storm passes. The roses would bloom in their own time, and so would we.
The crystal champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched my mother-in-law's perfectly painted lips curl into what others might mistake for a smile. I knew better. 5 years of marriage to her son had taught me to recognize the predatory gleam in her eyes. "Everyone," Irene's voice carried across her opulent dining room, "I'd like to thank my dear daughter-in-law Eve for her unique contribution to our annual Christmas dinner." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the faces of Boston's elite. Who would have thought tacos would grace the Parker family table? The silence that followed felt like a noose tightening around my neck. I could feel Sam's hand squeeze my knee under the table, his touch both comforting and restraining. "Well," I managed, forcing brightness into my voice, "I thought it might be fun to mix things up a bit. After all, traditions have to start somewhere." Irene's laugh could have etched glass. "Oh, darling, some traditions are better left in their proper place. Like food trucks." My cheeks burned as several guests tittered. The emerald pendant Sam had given me for Christmas felt heavy against my collarbone, matching the weight in my stomach where our unannounced secret grew. "Mother," Sam's voice cut through the tension like a blade, "Eve's cooking is excellent. And if you'll remember, Dad specifically requested Mexican food tonight." Thomas, sitting at the far end of the table, nodded enthusiastically. Best damn tacos I've had in years. Thomas language, Irene snapped, her composure cracking slightly. She turned to Mrs. Henderson, wife of the city's most prominent judge. You'll have to forgive my husband. He's developed quite pedestrian taste since retirement. I watched 5-year-old Liam, oblivious to the tension, happily stuff another taco into his mouth, salsa dripping onto his Christmas sweater. The sight of my son's joy should have comforted me, but instead it twisted my gut with worry. Would my second child face the same subtle degradation I'd endured? Speaking of taste, Irene continued, swirling her wine, I was just telling Caroline about that charming little marketing firm you work for, Eve. It must be so fulfilling to handle accounts for local businesses. Actually, I set down my glass. We just landed the Richardson Group account. They're national. Sam stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. That's enough, Mother. Samuel, sit down. You're making a scene. No, you're making a scene. You've been making one all evening. He threw his napkin onto his plate. Eve, Liam, we're leaving. The room fell silent except for Liam's protest about his unfinished taco. I could feel 20 pairs of eyes boring into me as I helped our son out of his chair. Samuel, don't be ridiculous. Irene's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. What will people think? They'll think, Sam said, helping me with my coat, that I'm choosing my wife over your petty games. Merry Christmas, everyone. As we walked toward the door, I heard Irene's voice, softer now, meant for nearby ears but carrying in the silence. Poor Samuel. He always did have his father's weakness for common stock. I stopped dead in my tracks, the announcement I'd planned to make dying in my throat. The baby news would have to wait. Behind me, I heard a chair move, followed by an unfamiliar voice. Actually, Irene, I should be going too. Suddenly, I'm not feeling very comfortable. More chairs scraped back. More murmured excuses. I didn't turn to watch Irene's carefully constructed evening crumble, but I could feel it in the air like static before a storm. In the car, Sam's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I'm sorry, he said. I should have done that years ago. I placed my hand over his. It's okay. But Sam, there's something I need to tell you. He glanced at me, then back at the road. What is it? In the rearview mirror, I could see Liam had already fallen asleep, salsa still staining his sweater. Maybe we should wait until we get home. Some bombs, after all, are better dropped in private. Our house felt like a sanctuary after the disaster at Irene's. I watched Sam carry Liam, still fast asleep, up to his bedroom. The Christmas tree lights cast dancing shadows on the walls, a mockery of the festive evening we'd planned. I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto our couch, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach. 8 weeks. I'd waited for the perfect moment to share the news, imagining joy and celebration. Instead, I got warfare over tacos. Sam returned, loosening his tie. Want a drink? Never mind, you can't. He stopped short, staring at me. Wait, is that why you haven't been drinking? How long have you known? 2 weeks. I patted the space beside me. I wanted to tell everyone tonight. Stupid, right? He sat down heavily, running his hands through his hair. A baby. We're having another baby. A smile spread across his face, but it faltered. And my mother just. God, Eve, I'm so sorry. Don't. You stood up for me. That's what matters. I should have done it sooner. Years sooner. He reached for my hand. The things she said about your work, your cooking. She had no right. My phone buzzed. Irene's name lit up the screen. Don't answer it, Sam said. I showed him the text. I hope you're satisfied with the scene you caused. Your behavior reflects poorly on this family. Sam grabbed his own phone, thumbs flying across the screen. I'm telling her to back off. Wait. I caught his arm. Let her think she's won. Let her think we're wounded and retreating. It'll make what comes next hit harder. He looked at me strangely. What comes next? I stood up, pacing the room. The fury I'd suppressed all evening fueled each step. 5 years, Sam. 5 years of snide comments about my background, my career, how I'm raising Liam. And now there's another baby coming. Do you think she'll suddenly become grandmother of the year? Eve. No. I'm done playing nice. I'm done pretending her barbs don't draw blood. Did you see Thomas's face tonight? Even he's tired of her games. Sam's phone chimed. Another message from Irene. Samuel, call me immediately. We need to discuss damage control. Damage control? I laughed bitterly. That's rich, coming from someone who just insulted her son's wife in front of half of Boston's elite. What are you thinking? Sam's voice was quiet, careful. I'm thinking it's time your mother learned about consequences. I met his eyes. Did you know she has a friend named Maggie Collins? Used to have, I should say. Grace mentioned her once. Apparently they had some kind of falling out years ago. The kind that gets whispered about at charity functions. Sam frowned. I remember Maggie. She used to be at every event, then suddenly, nothing. Mother said she moved to Chicago. Except she didn't. She lives 20 minutes away. And according to Grace, she knows things about your mother. Things that would make tonight's social embarrassment look like a paper cut. Eve, this is my mother we're talking about. And I'm talking about protecting our family. Our children. I touched my stomach again. What happens when this one arrives? More subtle digs about bloodlines? More undermining our parenting? Where does it end, Sam? His phone buzzed again. A third message from Irene. Your silence is childish. Think of your position in society. Sam stared at the message for a long moment. When he looked up, something had shifted in his eyes. What exactly did Grace tell you about Maggie? Not much. But she said Maggie would talk to me if I reached out. I sat back down beside him. I'm not suggesting we destroy your mother, Sam. I'm suggesting we show her she's not the only one who knows how to play games. He was quiet for so long I thought he'd refuse. Finally, he said, if we do this, we need to be smart. Careful. We will be. I leaned against him, exhausted but determined. Besides, I learned from the best. Your mother's been teaching me for years. She just didn't realize it. Sam's phone lit up one final time. Don't forget who you are, Samuel. Don't forget what being a Parker means. I smiled, feeling the baby flutter beneath my hand. Oh, we won't forget, Irene. In fact, we're about to remind everyone exactly what being a Parker means. The cafe where I agreed to meet Maggie Collins looked nothing like I'd imagined. No crystal chandeliers or imported marble floors, just worn leather booths and the smell of burnt coffee. She'd chosen well. Irene wouldn't be caught dead here. Maggie sat in the furthest corner, stirring sugar into her cup with precise movements. Her appearance startled me. I'd expected someone more like Irene, polished and preserved. Instead, she wore jeans and a faded sweater, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. You look just like your pictures, she said as I slid into the booth. Social media is quite useful for research. You've been watching me? I've been watching all of you. Especially after what happened at Christmas. She smiled thinly. News travels fast in certain circles. The waitress appeared. I ordered herbal tea, my usual coffee suddenly impossible with morning sickness lurking. Maggie noticed but didn't comment. Why did you call me? I asked once we were alone. Because history is repeating itself. She pulled out her phone, scrolled briefly, then placed it face down on the table. 20 years ago, Thomas's firm hired a brilliant young architect named Catherine Walsh. She and Sam's father worked closely together. Too closely, according to Irene. My throat tightened. What happened? Irene happened. She started with small things, excluding Catherine from social events, spreading whispers about her background. Sound familiar? I thought of the Christmas dinner, of all the subtle cuts over the years. Go on. Then Catherine got pregnant. Maggie's fingers tightened around her cup. Irene convinced everyone it was Thomas's child. She orchestrated the perfect scandal, just enough evidence to seem plausible, just enough doubt to destroy both Catherine's marriage and her career. But it wasn't true. The baby was Catherine's husband's. But by the time that came to light, the damage was done. Catherine left Boston, her marriage in shambles. Her husband never recovered from the humiliation. He died 2 years later. My hand instinctively moved to my stomach. Why are you telling me this? Because I helped Irene do it. Maggie's voice cracked. I was her best friend, her confidant. I watched her destroy that family and said nothing. Did nothing. Until now. Until now. She reached for her phone again, this time sliding it toward me. These are letters, emails, records of everything Irene did, not just to Catherine but to others. Anyone she saw as a threat to her perfect world. I stared at the phone but didn't touch it. Why keep all this? Insurance at first. Then guilt. Maggie leaned forward. But here's what you really need to know. Catherine Walsh wasn't the first, and you won't be the last. Irene's already laying groundwork against you. I've heard the whispers starting. My tea grew cold as Maggie detailed Irene's pattern, the careful manipulation of facts, the strategic placement of doubts, the slow erosion of reputations. Each story made my skin crawl. What do you want from me? I finally asked. Want? Nothing. But I'm offering you a choice. These records, they're yours if you want them. Use them, don't use them. But know what you're dealing with. My phone buzzed. A text from Sam. Mother's planning a family dinner next week. Says she wants to apologize. Should we go? I looked back at Maggie. There's more, isn't there? Something you're not telling me. She stood, leaving money for her coffee. Ask your father-in-law about the summer of 1985. About why they really left Newport. She placed a USB drive on the table. Everything's on here. Be careful, Eve. Irene's most dangerous when she's apologizing. I watched her leave, the USB drive feeling like a live grenade in my hand. Another text from Sam. Eve? What should I tell her? The baby shifted. Or maybe it was just anxiety twisting my stomach. I thought of Catherine Walsh, of ruined lives and calculated destruction. Of the child growing inside me, who would someday face Irene's judgment. I picked up my phone. Tell her yes. Tell her we'd love to hear her apology. Sometimes the best defense is letting your enemy think they're winning. I slipped the USB drive into my purse, already planning my next move. Irene had taught me well, too well. Time to show her exactly how much I'd learned. The USB drive sat on our kitchen counter like a loaded gun while I tried to find the right words. Sam stood across from me, his architect's hands wrapped around a coffee mug, waiting. Catherine Walsh, I said finally. Does that name mean anything to you? His forehead creased. She worked with Dad years ago. There was some scandal. I was away at college. He set down his mug. What's this about, Eve? I pushed the drive toward him. Maggie Collins gave me this. It's everything: emails, letters, records. Your mother didn't just hurt Catherine. She destroyed her. Sam's face hardened as he scrolled through the files. The kitchen grew darker as clouds gathered outside, but neither of us moved to turn on the lights. I watched his expression shift from disbelief to anger to something worse, recognition. I remember more now, he said. Catherine's husband. He drank himself to death. Because your mother convinced everyone the baby was your father's. That's impossible. Dad would never. He didn't. That's the point. Your mother fabricated everything. My stomach lurched, morning sickness or stress, I couldn't tell anymore. And now she's doing it again. To me. Sam's phone lit up. Irene's face appeared on the screen. He let it ring. There's more, I said. Maggie mentioned something about Newport, summer of 1985. She said to ask your father. The color drained from Sam's face. We moved that summer. Mother said. She said it was for Dad's work. Sam. He grabbed his keys. We need to talk to my father. Now. The drive to Thomas's office was silent except for the rhythm of windshield wipers against unexpected rain. Sam's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, just like Christmas night. Thomas's secretary tried to stop us, but Sam pushed past her. His father looked up from his desk, reading glasses perched on his nose. Samuel? Eve? What's wrong? Newport, Sam said. 1985. Tell us what really happened. Thomas removed his glasses slowly, deliberately. Closed the door. I sat while Sam paced. Thomas looked older suddenly, worn down by memories. Your mother, he began, had a relationship with Judge Henderson. The same Judge Henderson whose wife had been at Christmas dinner. My head spun. She was going to leave, Thomas continued. Take you with her. But Henderson's wife threatened to expose some financial irregularities, dealings that would have ruined both families. So you ran, I said. Thomas nodded. Started fresh in Boston. Irene got what she wanted: social status control. I got to keep my son. He looked at Sam. I should have told you years ago. Why now? Sam's voice cracked. Why tell us this now? Because I saw her face at Christmas. Thomas turned to me. When you left Eve, I saw that same look she had in Newport. She's planning something. My phone buzzed. A text from Grace. Call me now. Something's happening with the Richardson account. Cold dread settled in my stomach as I dialed. Grace's voice was tight. The Richardson Group is pulling their contract. They're claiming conflict of interest, citing concerns about your personal conduct. The room tilted. Sam caught my arm as I swayed. That's not possible, I whispered. We just signed last week. Their CEO got an anonymous tip. Grace paused. Eve, they mentioned concerns about the paternity of your current pregnancy. The pieces clicked into place. Irene's apologetic dinner invitation. The whispers Maggie mentioned. History repeating itself. Eve. Sam touched my face. What's wrong? I looked at Thomas, who nodded grimly. He recognized Irene's handiwork too. Your mother, I said, just cost me my biggest client. And she's suggesting our baby isn't yours. Sam's phone lit up again. Irene's smiling face on the screen, probably calling to console her son about his wayward wife. Take it, I said, steel entering my voice. Tell her we'll be at dinner next week. Tell her everything's fine. Eve, the difference between your mother and me? I pressed my hand to my stomach, feeling our child move. I learned from history. I don't repeat it. The rain intensified outside Thomas's window, but inside, everything was crystalline clear. Irene had just made her move. Now it was my turn. Grace spread the documents across my dining room table like a fortune teller laying out tarot cards. Each paper represented another piece of my professional life crumbling. The Richardson contract cancellation, whispered concerns from other clients, carefully worded emails questioning my personal situation. She's thorough, Grace said, tapping a particularly damning letter. The rumors are vague enough to seem plausible, specific enough to cause damage. Sam paced behind us, phone pressed to his ear. Dad, we need those Newport records. Yes, I understand they're sealed, but... He caught my eye, shaking his head. The doorbell rang. Thomas Parker stood on our doorstep, clutching a leather briefcase that had seen better days. I found something, he said, brushing past me. Liam's footsteps thundered down the stairs. Grandpa! Hey, sport! Thomas ruffled our son's hair. Why don't you show me that new video game? I watched Liam drag Thomas toward the living room, grateful for the distraction. When I returned to the dining room, Grace was already diving into Thomas's briefcase. These are bank statements, she muttered. From 1985. Wait. She looked up sharply. Is this what I think it is? Sam leaned over her shoulder. Mother's private account. Dad must have kept copies. Smart man, Grace said. And look who was making regular deposits. The name jumped off the page. Henderson. Not the current judge, but his father. The same man Irene had nearly left Thomas for. My phone buzzed. A text from Maggie. Irene's at the country club with Judge Henderson's wife. They're discussing you. Perfect timing, I said, showing them the message. She's laying groundwork for whatever comes next. Eve. Grace's voice was careful. These deposits, they didn't stop in 1985. They continued until 2002. Sam snatched the papers. That's impossible. Mother and Judge Henderson ended things when we left Newport. Did they? I remembered Irene's face at Christmas, the way she gravitated toward Mrs. Henderson. Not to torture her old rival, but to maintain control. What if that's why she really stayed? Not for your father's sake, but because Henderson paid her to keep quiet. Blackmail, Grace whispered. These amounts. This isn't hush money for an affair. This is blackmail. The room spun slightly. Morning sickness chose that moment to rear up, sending me stumbling toward the bathroom. When I returned, Sam was on the phone again. Maggie? It's Sam Parker. We need to talk. I sank into a chair, pressing my hands against my stomach. Our baby kicked as if sensing the tension. Eve. Grace touched my shoulder. You're pale. I'm fine. I wasn't. Nothing was fine. We need to. Mommy. Liam stood in the doorway, clutching his game controller. Grandpa fell asleep. Sam ended his call abruptly. We rushed to the living room where Thomas sat slumped in his armchair, breathing but unresponsive. The next hours passed in a blur of ambulance lights and hospital corridors. Stress-induced stroke, the doctors said. He'd recover but needed rest. In the hospital waiting room, Sam gripped my hand. Mother's on her way. Of course she is. I stood suddenly certain. This is perfect for her. She'll play the devoted wife, use this to paint me as the villain who upset her husband with baseless accusations. Eve. No. My voice was steady despite the trembling in my chest. She won't win. Not this time. What are you going to do? I thought of Catherine Walsh, of Thomas lying unconscious, of the baby growing inside me, of Liam who deserved better than this toxic legacy. I'm going to give her exactly what she wants, I said. The perfect opportunity to destroy me. And when she takes it, because she will, I'm going to make sure everyone sees exactly who Irene Parker really is. Sam's phone lit up with Irene's call. This time I answered it myself. Irene? Yes, he's stable. Actually, I'm glad you called. I think it's time we had a proper talk. Just you and me. I caught my reflection in the hospital window, pale, determined, dangerous. After all, we're family. The restaurant Irene chose was exactly what I expected. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, judgmental waiters. She sat at a corner table, perfectly composed in Chanel, while I fought another wave of morning sickness. Eve, darling. She air-kissed my cheek. You look tired. Thomas's condition must be so stressful. I slid into my seat, positioning my phone carefully on the table. How thoughtful of you to notice. Well, family is everything. She signaled for wine. Speaking of which, I heard about the Richardson account. Such a shame. Is it? I met her eyes. Funny how rumors about my pregnancy's paternity reached them so quickly. The waiter approached. Irene ordered wine for both of us. Just water for me, I said. The baby, remember? Of course. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Samuel's baby. Though I understand there might be some question about that. My phone buzzed. Right on schedule. Actually, I said, I wanted to discuss another baby. Catherine Walsh's. The wine glass froze halfway to her lips. I'm not familiar with. Newport, 1985. Judge Henderson. The payments that continued until 2002. I placed Thomas's bank statements on the table. Should I continue? Color drained from her face. Where did you get those? Thomas kept copies. Insurance, I suppose. Like Maggie kept those letters. Maggie. Her mask slipped. That bitter drunk? No one would believe. Mrs. Henderson might. Especially the part about her husband's father. 20 years of payments, Irene. That's not hush money for a simple affair. She reached for the statements. I pulled them back. What do you want? Stop the rumors. Restore my reputation. Leave my family alone. Or what? Steel entered her voice. You'll destroy your husband's family? Ruin his father's legacy? What kind of mother does that make you? My phone buzzed again. I checked it, letting her see my smile. What aren't you telling me? She demanded. Grace just texted. The judge's wife agreed to meet. Apparently, she's very interested in those bank statements. Irene's hand shook as she reached for her wine. You're bluffing. Am I? You taught me well, remember? Always have leverage. I stood, fighting another wave of nausea. You have 24 hours to fix this. Or everyone learns the truth. Not just about Catherine Walsh, but about what really happened in Newport. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. I made one mistake, Eve. I underestimated you. She smiled and my blood ran cold. I won't make it twice. My phone rang. Sam's number. Eve. His voice was tight with panic. It's Liam. He's missing. The room spun. I gripped the chair. The school called, Sam continued. Someone picked him up early. They said it was his grandmother. I whirled back to Irene, but her seat was empty. On the table lay a note. Now we can discuss terms. Mother knows best. The nausea one. I barely made it to the bathroom. When I emerged, Grace was waiting. Sam called me, she said, steadying me. Police are already looking. We'll find him. My phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. He's safe. For now. Shame about those bank statements. Accidents happen when children play near water. Remember Newport. The pieces clicked together. Thomas's stroke, the timing of it all. This wasn't just about me anymore. Eve. Grace touched my arm. What do you want to do? I thought of Catherine Walsh's husband, dead from Irene's machinations. Of Thomas in his hospital bed. Of my unborn child and now Liam. Call Maggie, I said. Tell her to release everything. All of it. But Liam. Irene won't hurt him. She needs him as leverage. My hand stopped shaking as clarity hit. But she forgot something important. What's that? I'm not Catherine Walsh. I'm not Thomas. And I'm sure as hell not the scared society wife she thinks I am. I pulled out my phone. I'm the woman who has nothing left to lose. Sometimes, to save your children, you have to be willing to burn everything to the ground, including yourself. I dialed Judge Henderson's number. Judge Henderson's study smelled of leather and power. He sat behind his mahogany desk while his wife perched on a leather armchair, both staring at the documents spread before them. These payments, Mrs. Henderson's voice trembled. All these years. The door opened. Irene swept in, Liam's small hand clutched in hers. My son's eyes were red-rimmed but defiant. Mommy! He tried to run to me, but Irene's grip tightened. Not yet, darling. She surveyed the room, faltering only slightly at the sight of the Hendersons. This is a rather unexpected gathering. Let him go, Mother. Sam stepped from the shadows, and I saw Irene flinch at the ice in his voice. Samuel, you don't understand. I'm protecting our family. By kidnapping my son? My voice stayed steady despite the rage burning in my chest. By destroying Catherine Walsh? By blackmailing the Hendersons for 20 years. Everything I did was for this family's standing. Her chin lifted. Judge Henderson understands. Don't you, Robert? The judge wouldn't meet her eyes. His wife stood, shoulders straight. Actually, Irene, Robert was just explaining how you threatened to expose his father's illegal property dealings unless he paid you. How you orchestrated Catherine Walsh's destruction because she discovered the truth. Lies. But Irene's perfect mask cracked. You have no proof. Thomas kept everything. I nodded to Grace, who stepped forward with another file. Every transaction, every letter, every threat. He knew someday someone would need to stop you. Thomas. Real fear flickered across her face. He would never. He woke up an hour ago. Sam's voice was quiet. He signed a statement about Newport. About what really happened the night Catherine's husband died. Irene's grip on Liam loosened. He broke free, running into Sam's arms. You're finished, Irene. Mrs. Henderson's voice shook with decades of suppressed rage. The police are waiting outside. Robert has already agreed to testify. No. Irene's laugh held an edge of hysteria. You wouldn't dare. Think of the scandal, the shame. Like the shame you brought to Catherine Walsh? Maggie stepped into the room. Or to Thomas. To your own son. You. Irene's eyes narrowed. You betrayed me. No, Irene. You betrayed yourself. I moved closer, feeling my unborn child shift. You thought power meant control. But real power? It's knowing when to let go. She reached for her phone. One call and your reputation is already restored. Grace held up her tablet. The Richardson Group just released a statement apologizing for their hasty judgment, citing malicious interference in their decision-making process. Irene's phone slipped from her fingers. For the first time I saw her age, saw the fear beneath the perfect facade. Samuel, she whispered. You can't let them do this. I'm your mother. Sam held Liam tighter. You stopped being my mother the moment you threatened my son. Police sirens wailed outside. Irene straightened her spine, smoothed her designer dress. Well played, Eve. Her smile was almost admiring. But remember, you learned everything from me. No. I touched my stomach, feeling stronger than I had in months. I learned from watching you destroy people. The difference is I chose to be better. As the police led her away, she turned back once. It was all for you, Samuel. Everything I did. was for yourself. Sam's voice was final. Goodbye, Mother. In the aftermath, Mrs. Henderson gripped my hand. Thank you. After all these years. Don't thank me. I watched Liam nestle against Sam's shoulder, safe and whole. Some debts need to be paid. Outside, reporters gathered, drawn by the spectacle of Irene Parker's arrest. But their cameras caught something else too. A family walking away whole, a woman who chose justice over revenge, and the end of a legacy built on lies. Grace touched my arm. You okay? I looked at Sam, at Liam, at the future growing inside me. You know what? For the first time in years, I really am. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in destroying your enemy, but in refusing to become them. Spring sunlight filtered through the hospital windows as I watched Thomas hold his granddaughter for the first time. His hands, still slightly weak from the stroke, trembled as he cradled her. She has your spirit, he said, touching her tiny fist. Look how she fights the swaddle. Sam laughed from his perch on the windowsill. Just like her mother. The door opened and Liam burst in, followed by Grace carrying a truly ridiculous balloon arrangement. Is she awake? Liam whispered loudly, climbing onto the bed beside me. Can I hold her? Careful. Sam guided our son's arms into position. Support her head, just like we practiced. I watched my family crowd around the baby, their faces soft with wonder. The newspaper on my bedside table caught my eye. Irene's sentencing had made the front page. 3 years for kidnapping, plus additional charges for blackmail and conspiracy. The society pages were already buzzing about her fall from grace. Mrs. Henderson called, Grace said quietly, settling into the visitor's chair. She wanted to thank you again. Catherine Walsh's family too. How are they? Healing. Like all of us. She squeezed my hand. The Richardson group wants to meet next week. They're practically begging for you to take them back. Let them wait. I watched Liam plant a gentle kiss on his sister's forehead. Some things are more important than business. The baby started fussing. Thomas handed her back to me, his eyes misty. You know, he said. Irene sent a letter from prison. Wanted to see the baby. The room stilled. Sam straightened, protective instinct flaring. What did you tell her? I asked. Nothing yet. Thomas smiled sadly. It's not my decision to make. I looked down at my daughter, so new and untouched by the darkness we'd fought through. Part of me wanted to shield her completely, to build walls so high no harm could ever reach her. But I remembered another wall, built by another mother, and how it had warped everything it was meant to protect. We'll decide later, I said finally. When she's older. When we can tell her the whole story and let her choose. Sam nodded, understanding in his eyes. No more secrets. No more fear. Speaking of secrets, Grace pulled out her phone. Maggie sent this. Thought you'd want to see it. It was a photo of Irene's old society circle at their weekly lunch. Seated in Irene's usual chair was Mrs. Henderson, her smile genuine for the first time in decades. Beside her sat Maggie, welcomed back after years of exile. Karma, Grace said, comes in many forms. So does justice, I added, thinking of Catherine Walsh, of Thomas's quiet strength, of all the lives Irene had tried to control. Liam tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, what should we name her? I caught Sam's eye, saw him nod slightly. Catherine, I said. Catherine Grace Parker. Thomas's breath caught. Grace pressed her hand to her mouth. The baby opened her eyes then, staring up at me with a gaze that seemed too wise for her few hours of life. In that moment, I understood something about power and revenge that Irene never had. True strength isn't in controlling others, but in giving them the freedom to choose their own path. Welcome to the family, Catherine, I whispered. The real one. Outside, Boston's spring breeze carried away the last remnants of winter. Soon, the society pages would find new scandals, new dramas to dissect. But here in this quiet room, we had already found what mattered: truth, healing, and the courage to break cycles of pain. The baby gripped my finger, her hold surprisingly strong. Like she knew she was safe, knew she was loved, knew she would grow up in a home where strength meant something different than it had before. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in building something better from the ashes. Catherine yawned and we all laughed, the sound bright and real and free.
The ocean breeze carried their voices across the empty beach, sharp and hostile against the gentle lap of waves. I wasn't meant to hear them, but there I stood, barefoot in my wedding dress, frozen behind the wooden pavilion where hours ago Ryan had promised to love me forever. She'll never fit in with our family, and you know it. Laura's voice cut through the darkness. A foster child. Really, Ryan? What were you thinking? Mother, enough. I married Elizabeth because you're rebelling, just like when you were 16 and dated that waitress to spite me. But this isn't a teenage fling. This is marriage. I pressed my hands against the rough wood, my wedding ring catching the moonlight. The same ring Ryan had slipped onto my finger with tears in his eyes, promising me a lifetime of happiness. Now he stood silent while his mother tore apart everything we were supposed to be. Give it time, Ryan said finally, his voice weak. Elizabeth is different. Different? Laura laughed, the sound like breaking glass. That's precisely the problem. She's not one of us. Never will be. Did you see how she handled the wine selection at dinner? Completely clueless. My cheeks burned. I'd chosen the wine I thought tasted best, not the most expensive one. Such a simple thing, but in Laura's world, every choice was a test I seemed destined to fail. She's smart, Mother, a successful translator, a glorified secretary who plays with words. Is that what you want? Someone who works for a living when she should be managing charity galas and upholding our family's reputation? The silence that followed hurt more than any words could. Ryan, my husband of 8 hours, didn't defend me, didn't tell his mother that love mattered more than social status, didn't mention how David and Susan, my foster parents, had given me more love and support than money could buy. What do you expect me to do? Ryan's voice had changed, becoming smaller, more uncertain, like a child seeking approval. Nothing drastic, not yet, but remember, darling, prenuptial agreements can be very useful things, especially when certain parties prove unsuitable. My fingers curled into fists, pristine French manicure digging into my palms. The pain helped me focus, helped me push back the tears threatening to spill. I thought of David and Susan, how they'd welcomed me into their home when I was 12, scared and defensive after years of being shuffled between foster homes. They'd taught me that family meant unconditional love, not social climbing and manipulation. I should get back, Ryan said. Elizabeth will wonder where I am. Of course, darling. Go play house with your little charity case, but remember what I said. Their footsteps faded in opposite directions, leaving me alone with the truth I'd been too blind to see. The perfect wedding, the elaborate honeymoon suite, the champagne toasts. It had all been a beautiful lie, a facade hiding the rot beneath. I slipped off my heels and walked toward the water, letting the cold waves wash over my feet. The expensive wedding dress, chosen by Laura, of course, dragged in the wet sand. I didn't care anymore. My phone buzzed in the hidden pocket Susan had insisted on adding to the dress. A text from Daniel, my boss. Hope the wedding was everything you dreamed of. Remember, your job will always be here for you. I stared at the message, something shifting inside me. Daniel had always seen my potential, had promoted me based on merit rather than background. In his world, I wasn't a charity case or a social climber. I was simply Elizabeth, valued for who I was. The waves retreated, leaving my feet buried in the sand. Trapped, just like I'd trapped myself in this marriage. But unlike the sand, this trap wasn't permanent, not if I decided to fight back. I looked up at the resort's gleaming windows, knowing somewhere behind them, Ryan waited in our honeymoon suite, probably rehearsing excuses for his absence. Let him wait, I had planning to do. 3 weeks after the wedding, I sat in David and Susan's kitchen, watching steam rise from my untouched coffee. The familiar scent of hops from their brewery drifted through the open window, a reminder of simpler times. You're not eating, sweetheart. Susan pushed a plate of scones closer. These are your favorite. I forced a smile. Just tired. The charity gala Laura's organizing is taking up all my free time. Ah, yes, the famous hospital fundraiser. David's voice carried an edge I rarely heard. The one Ryan's mother insisted you help plan, despite your full-time job. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. I hadn't told them about the conversation I'd overheard at the beach, hadn't admitted that my marriage was already crumbling under the weight of Laura's expectations. My phone buzzed. Another text from Ryan. Mother needs the final guest list by tonight. Don't embarrass us. Elizabeth. Susan's hand covered mine. What's really going on? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. David went to answer it, and moments later, Laura swept into the kitchen like she owned it, designer heels clicking against the worn tiles. Elizabeth, darling, I thought I might find you here. Her smile never reached her eyes. Shouldn't you be working on the seating arrangements? Susan straightened, her warmth vanishing. We're having a family breakfast. How quaint. Laura's gaze swept over the modest kitchen. But Elizabeth has responsibilities now, real ones. I gripped my coffee mug harder. I submitted the seating chart yesterday. And it was completely wrong. You put the mayor's wife next to her husband's former mistress. Laura sighed dramatically. These are things you should know, dear. Social awareness is crucial in our circles. I wasn't aware I needed a degree in local affairs to arrange dinner seats. Laura's eyes narrowed at my tone. Ryan mentioned you've been difficult lately. I assumed it was wedding stress, but perhaps it's something else. The threat in her voice was clear. I thought of the prenup she'd mentioned, of Ryan's silence that night on the beach. Actually, I said, standing up, I've been meaning to ask about the donation records for the gala. Some numbers don't add up. For a split second, Laura's composure cracked. What numbers? The ones from last year's event. Daniel's company was listed as a major donor, but he says they never received a tax receipt. Your boss should mind his own business. Laura's voice turned sharp, and so should you. David stepped forward. Is there a problem with the charity's accounts, Laura? Of course not. Just a clerical error, I'm sure. She turned to me, all pretense of warmth gone. Ryan's waiting at home. Don't make him wait too long. Marriage requires attention. After she left, Susan hugged me tight. That woman's hiding something. I know. I pulled back, my mind racing, and I'm going to find out what it is. That evening, I returned home to find Ryan in his study, surrounded by work papers. He barely looked up when I entered. Mother says you were asking about the charity records. Shouldn't I be interested in our family's philanthropic work? He finally met my eyes. Some things are better left alone, Elizabeth. Like your mother's comments about me at our wedding. Ryan's face paled. You heard that? I heard everything. I moved closer, watching his reaction, including your silence. It's complicated. No, it's really not. I picked up one of his papers, a financial report for the hospital charity. What's complicated is these numbers. They don't match the public records. Put that down. Ryan snatched the paper away. You're out of your depth. I smiled, thinking of Daniel's text from earlier. Found something interesting in the charity's tax filings. Come see me tomorrow. Maybe I am, I said, turning to leave. Or maybe I'm exactly where I need to be. Ryan called after me, but I was already walking away, my mind clear for the first time in weeks. Laura thought she could break me with her social games and subtle threats. She didn't realize that growing up in foster care had taught me something valuable. Sometimes the best defense is a carefully planned offense. I pulled out my phone and texted Daniel. Meeting tomorrow confirmed. Bring everything you have. Daniel spread the documents across his desk, each paper another nail in Laura's carefully constructed coffin. The hospital charity's been a front for years. Money goes in, but only half makes it to actual medical equipment. I traced the flow of numbers, my hands trembling. Where's the rest going? Private accounts, shell companies. He tapped a statement. Most of it ends up here. An offshore trust in Ryan's name. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Not just Laura's corruption, but Ryan's involvement. All those nights he'd worked late, claiming to be managing charitable donations, he'd been helping his mother steal from sick children. My phone buzzed, Laura's number. I declined the call, but her text came through anyway. Ryan tells me you've been meeting with Daniel. Remember your place, dear. Daniel watched me carefully. There's more. The development project Ryan's been working on. Laura's been sabotaging it behind the scenes. She's making sure he fails. Why would she hurt her own son? Control. If he succeeds, he might break free. But if he fails... Daniel's voice trailed off as my phone buzzed again. This time it was Ryan. Where are you? Mother's furious about the gala seating changes. I stood up, my decision crystallizing. I need copies of everything. Elizabeth. Daniel's tone made me pause. Be careful. Laura's dangerous when cornered. I arrived home to find Laura waiting in our living room, Ryan standing by the window like a scolded child. Emergency board meeting tomorrow, Laura announced without preamble. Ryan's project is being reviewed. Apparently, someone raised concerns about financial irregularities. Ryan's head snapped up. What? That's impossible. Unless, Laura cut in, someone's been talking to the wrong people. Her eyes fixed on me. Like certain employees at rival firms. I don't know what you're talking about. I kept my voice steady, thinking of the documents in my bag. No? Laura stood, smoothing her designer dress. Then you won't mind explaining why you've been meeting with Daniel. He's quite interested in our family's business lately. Daniel's my boss. We discuss work. Your work is translation, not finance. She moved closer. Stay in your lane, Elizabeth. Some roads are too dangerous for newcomers. Ryan finally spoke. Elizabeth, whatever you think you know, I know enough. I cut him off, pulling out one of Daniel's documents. Like how the children's ward never got those new ventilators, but you bought a yacht last month. Laura's composure cracked. Where did you get that? The same place I got proof of Ryan's offshore accounts, and records of how you've been sabotaging his career to keep him dependent on you. Ryan grabbed the paper, his face draining of color. Mother, is this true? Of course not. But Laura's voice wavered. She's trying to turn you against me, just like I warned you she would. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my ears. You did that yourself, Laura. I'm just exposing the truth. Truth? Laura's eyes turned cold. Here's truth. Ryan's filing for divorce. Aren't you, darling? The silence stretched. I watched my husband, the man I'd loved, the man I'd thought loved me, struggle with his mother's leash. I'm sorry, he whispered finally. Mother knows best. Does she? I pulled out my phone, showing them the email I'd just sent. Because the hospital board might disagree. They're very interested in where their donations went. Laura lunged for my phone, but I stepped back. That's just the beginning. By tomorrow, every news outlet in the city will have copies of everything. Your reputation, your social standing, your precious family name, all gone. You wouldn't dare, Laura hissed. You'll destroy Ryan too. You already did that. I turned to my husband. You just never let him see it. I walked out, leaving them with their crumbling lies. In my bag, Daniel's documents felt like weapons, which I supposed they were. Laura had taught me well. In her world, information was power, and now I had enough to burn her empire to the ground. My phone buzzed with a text from Susan. You okay, sweetheart? I wasn't. Not yet, but I would be. Because Laura had forgotten something crucial about people who grow up in foster care. We learn early that family isn't about blood, it's about loyalty. And I'd just discovered exactly where everyone's loyalties lay. The morning headline screamed across my phone screen. Local hospital charity under investigation. Below it, a smaller headline. Business mogul Laura Harrison steps down from board. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, my hands shook as I read Ryan's latest text. You have no idea what you've started. I deleted it without responding and headed to work, only to find my office door locked. Daniel waited nearby, his expression grim. Board meeting in 10 minutes. Laura's lawyers are here. Already? I straightened my spine, remembering the backup files hidden in 3 different locations. They're claiming defamation, and... He hesitated. Ryan supporting their case. Of course he was. I'd expected the legal threats, but something in Daniel's tone made me pause. What aren't you telling me? Before he could answer, his assistant rushed in. They're asking for you both, now. The boardroom felt like a trap. Laura sat at the head of the table, immaculate as ever, while Ryan stood by the window. But it was the third person who made my blood freeze, Susan. Elizabeth? Laura's smile was razor-sharp. Thank you for joining us. I believe you know Ryan's private investigator. Susan met my eyes, her familiar warmth replaced by professional detachment. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. The room tilted. Susan, my foster mother, my rock, had been working for them all along. Quite the thorough investigation, Laura continued. Every meeting, every phone call, every document you accessed, all carefully documented. I gripped the back of a chair. Why? Insurance, Ryan said quietly. Mother always has insurance. Susan pulled out a folder. Elizabeth's foster care records, including sealed juvenile documents about a fire at her third foster home. My chest tightened. That fire, an accident, ruled inconclusive. I'd been 12, angry, lost. No charges filed, but the whispers had followed me until David and Susan took me in. Or so I'd thought. You were never just foster parents, were you? The words tasted like ash. We loved you, Susan whispered. That was real, but Laura hired us to monitor potential threats to Ryan's future. Daniel stepped forward. This is harassment. This, Laura cut in, is protection. Elizabeth here thinks she can destroy my family. I've been destroying threats to my son's happiness for decades. Happiness? I laughed, the sound brittle. You call this happiness? I call it survival. Laura stood. Now, here's what happens next. You'll retract your allegations about the charity. Claim it was a misunderstanding. Then you'll accept a generous divorce settlement and disappear. Or those sealed records become very public, along with some interesting theories about that fire. The media loves a scandal. Imagine the headlines about Ryan's unstable, potentially dangerous wife. I looked at Susan, seeing years of shared memories crumble. Was anything real? Everything that mattered. Her voice cracked. But Laura has evidence that could hurt David's brewery, our retirement, our employees' livelihoods. Enough. Daniel's voice cut through the tension. Elizabeth, don't say another word. This meeting's over. I walked out, my legs somehow carrying me despite the weight crushing my chest. Behind me, I heard Ryan call my name, but I kept moving. In Daniel's office, I finally broke. They had Susan watching me for years. Everything I thought I knew. Listen carefully. Daniel lowered his voice. Laura's not the only one with insurance. Remember that project I mentioned? About Ryan's development deals? I wiped my eyes, focusing. What about it? There's something they don't know we found. Something bigger than charity fraud. He slid a USB drive across his desk. Laura's not the only one who's been planning ahead. I stared at the drive, thinking of Susan's betrayal, of Ryan's cowardice, of Laura's endless manipulation. They thought they could bury me with my past. Fine, let them try. Because they'd forgotten something crucial, that angry 12-year-old girl they were threatening to expose. She survived. She learned. And now she had nothing left to lose. I picked up the drive, feeling its weight like a weapon in my palm. Tell me everything. The USB drive Daniel gave me contained something far worse than charity fraud. Development contracts, shell companies, and buried deep in the data, evidence of environmental violations that would destroy not just Laura's reputation, but her entire empire. I sat in my hotel room, surrounded by printouts and laptop screens, when someone knocked. Through the peephole, I saw David, alone. Elizabeth. His voice carried none of its usual warmth. Please, 5 minutes. I opened the door but kept the chain on. Did Susan send you? No, she doesn't know I'm here. He looked older, tired. Can we talk? Inside, He studied the papers scattered across the bed. "You're really going through with this?" "They gave me no choice." "There's always a choice." He picked up a document. "These development projects, they're not just Laura's, are they?" "No." I watched his face carefully. "The brewery's expansion, the new location Laura helped you secure, it's built on contaminated land. She knew, David. She knew, and she let you sink your retirement into it." He sank into a chair. "Why would she?" "Insurance. Like everything else." I handed him the soil reports. "One anonymous tip to the environmental agency, and you lose everything. She owns you, just like she owns Ryan." "And you're going to expose it all?" "Tomorrow night, at the charity gala." I smiled without humor. Laura's last big social event before her temporary retirement from the board. "It'll destroy us, all of us." "You destroyed me first." The words came out sharper than intended. "Or did you forget that part?" My phone buzzed, Ryan calling again. I declined it, but not before David saw his name. "He's been asking about you. Says he wants to explain." "There's nothing to explain." I turned to the window, watching the city lights blur. "He chose his side long ago. So did Susan. So did you. We loved you." David's voice cracked. "Whatever else happened, that was real." Was it? Or was I just another investment? A backup plan in case Laura needed leverage? The silence answered for him. My phone buzzed again. A text from Daniel. "Board meeting moved up, tomorrow morning. Laura's making her move." "You should go," I told David. "Plausible deniability." "When this breaks tomorrow night." "Elizabeth." He stood, suddenly looking more like the father I remembered. "What if there's another way? What if—" "Don't." I held up my hand. "Whatever Laura's offering, whatever deal she's dangling, it's too late. She'll destroy you, your past, your career." "My past?" I laughed. "That fire they're threatening to expose. It wasn't an accident. But it wasn't me either. It was my foster brother, the one they sent away, the one nobody believed." I met David's eyes. I learned then what happens when powerful people write the narrative. I won't let it happen again. His phone chimed, Susan calling. He stared at it, torn between two loyalties. "Go home, David. Hold Susan. Remember what it felt like to be good people." I turned back to my work. Tomorrow, everyone's true nature gets exposed. After he left, I opened Daniel's file on Ryan's development projects. The contamination wasn't just environmental, it was human. Displaced families, destroyed communities, all sacrificed for profit. Laura's legacy of destruction, wrapped in charity galas and social prestige. My phone buzzed one last time. "Laura. Final chance. Walk away now, or I release everything." I thought of that 12-year-old girl, watching her foster brother taken away for a crime he didn't commit. Thought of Susan's betrayal, Ryan's weakness, Laura's endless manipulation. "Release it," I typed back. "Tomorrow I release everything too. Let's see whose truth survives." I turned back to my preparations for the gala. Laura thought she was protecting her son, her legacy, her perfect world. She didn't understand that some people, pushed too far, stop caring about protection. Some people just want to watch carefully constructed lies burn. Tomorrow, we'd all learn what happens when the powerless finally gain power. When the watched become the watchers. When revenge stops being about justice and becomes something darker, deeper, more complete. I picked up my phone one last time, sending a single text to Daniel. "It's time. Release the first wave." The game was changing. Let them scramble to protect themselves. By tomorrow night, there would be nothing left to protect. The charity gala glittered with false promises, just like everything else in Laura's world. I adjusted my midnight blue gown, borrowed from the costume department at Daniel's firm, and watched the security feed on my phone. Laura stood at the podium, practicing her speech about community service and family values. Everything's in place. Daniel appeared beside me, champagne glasses in hand. "The press is here. Environmental inspectors are standing by. One word from you." "Elizabeth." Ryan's voice froze me. He stood in the doorway of the empty conference room, looking lost in his expensive suit. "You need to leave." Daniel stepped forward, but I touched his arm. "It's fine. Give us a minute." After Daniel left, Ryan moved closer. "You're really going through with this?" "Funny, David asked the same thing." "I saw him yesterday. He told me about the contaminated land." Ryan ran a hand through his hair. "Mother says she can fix it. Make it go away. Like she made me go away. That's not—" He stopped, frustrated. "I loved you. Part of me still does." "Part of you?" I laughed. "That's the problem, Ryan. You've never been whole, just fragments of whatever your mother wanted you to be." My phone buzzed. A text from Susan. "Please don't do this. We can find another way." "They're scared," Ryan said, watching me delete the message. "We all are. You have no idea what Mother's capable of." "Actually, I do." I pulled up the environmental report. "Did you know about the cancer cluster and that development you built? The one Mother helped cover up?" His face went pale. "Those reports were sealed." "Like my juvenile records?" I moved closer. "Your mother's not the only one who knows how to dig up secrets." The ballroom speakers crackled. Laura's introduction beginning. Ryan grabbed my arm. "Whatever you're planning, stop, please. For what we had was a lie." I pulled away. Everything was a lie. I headed for the ballroom, but Ryan's next words stopped me. "She'll release the truth about the fire." "Let her." "Not your truth, his truth." Ryan's voice dropped. "Your foster brother. Mother found him. He's willing to change his story. Say you were responsible. That he covered for you back then." The world tilted. "You're lying." "Check your phone." A video message waited. My foster brother, older now, haunted. Speaking Laura's scripted words about that night, about protecting me, about finally telling the truth. "How much?" My voice sounded distant. "How much did she pay him?" "Enough to destroy your life instead of his." The ballroom erupted in applause, Laura beginning her speech about family legacy and charitable works. My phone showed Daniel's message. "Now," Ryan stepped closer. "Walk away. Take the settlement. Start over somewhere else." I thought of that scared 12-year-old girl, watching her only friend taken away. Thought of Susan's years of surveillance, David's compromised brewery, Ryan's weak love, all of Laura's perfectly orchestrated destruction. "You know what's funny?" I turned to Ryan. "Your mother thinks she's protecting you, but she's just teaching you to be afraid." I walked into the ballroom as Laura reached her crescendo about family values. The USB drive felt heavy in my clutch. "Now," I texted Daniel. The screens behind Laura flickered. Environmental reports appeared. Financial records. The cancer cluster data. Laura's voice faltered as photographs of displaced families filled the displays. "What is this?" She tried to maintain control. "Technical difficulties." "No, Laura." My voice carried across the suddenly silent room. "This is truth. Your legacy." Security moved toward me, but stopped as reporters started shouting questions. Laura's face contorted with rage. "Remove her." "Before you do," I raised my voice, "ask your beloved chairwoman about the contaminated land she sold to local businesses. Ask about the families she destroyed. Ask about—" The lights went out. In the chaos that followed, I felt someone grab my arm. Ryan's voice in the darkness. "Mother says thank you for making this easy." The backup generators hummed to life, but it was too late. The screens were dark. My phone was dead. And Laura stood triumphant, tears in her eyes, playing the victim perfectly. "I'm so sorry," she addressed the crowd. "It seems my daughter-in-law's troubled past has finally caught up with her. Security, please escort her out, and someone call the police." I looked for Daniel, but he was gone. In my moment of revenge, I'd forgotten Laura's first rule: always control the narrative. The handcuffs felt cold against my wrists as Laura's carefully crafted story began to unfold. The holding cell's fluorescent lights buzzed like Laura's accusations in my head. 3 hours of questioning, and still no sign of Daniel. My phone, my evidence, everything, gone. The door opened. Not the detective this time, but Laura. Perfect as ever in her charity gala dress. Comfortable, she settled into the metal chair, smoothing her silk skirt. I brought your medication records, from when you were 12, such a troubled child. Where's Daniel? Resigned, effective immediately. She smiled thinly. Something about family emergency overseas. He left quite abruptly. My stomach dropped. Daniel had abandoned me too. The press is having a field day. Laura examined her manicure. Unstable foster child attacks respected philanthropist. Claims conspiracy. Very sad, really. The cell door opened again. Ryan entered, carrying a manila envelope. The papers are ready, Mother. Excellent. Laura slid them across the table. Full divorce settlement. Very generous, considering your episode. Sign now, and these unfortunate charges disappear. I stared at the envelope, remembering the night I'd heard them on the beach. You planned this from the beginning. Please, Laura waved dismissively. You planned your own destruction. I merely provided the stage. And the audience? I met Ryan's eyes. Was that your idea or hers? He wouldn't look at me. Just sign, Elizabeth. End this. Like you ended those families' lives, the ones who got cancer from your contaminated development. Alleged contamination. Laura's voice hardened. Unproven claims from unreliable sources. The cell door opened a third time. A guard entered with Susan. You have 5 minutes, he said, leaving us. Susan looked destroyed, tears tracking her makeup. Elizabeth, please, sign the papers. David's at the hospital, his heart. Stop. The pieces clicked together. David was fine yesterday. Stress can do terrible things. Laura stood, especially to someone facing environmental violations, bankruptcy, potential criminal charges. Unless I sign. Smart girl. Laura nodded to Ryan. You almost had me worried at the gala. Almost made me believe you'd learned something about power. She leaned closer. But you forgot the most important lesson. I never play just one game. My foster brother's video confession. David's sudden illness. Daniel's disappearance. All carefully orchestrated moves in Laura's grand performance. I reached for the pen. Wait. Susan's voice cracked. There's something you should know. Susan. Laura's warning was sharp. No. Susan straightened. I've watched you destroy enough lives, Laura, including your own son's. Ryan started. Mother, what is she? 25 years ago, Susan continued, Laura had another charity, another cover-up, another family destroyed. Laura moved with surprising speed, but Susan was faster. She pulled out her phone, playing a video I'd never seen. A younger Laura, speaking to someone off camera. The adoption records are sealed. He'll never know you existed. My son will have everything, the right name, the right future. Your sacrifice ensures that. Ryan staggered back. What sacrifice? Your real mother, Susan said quietly. The waitress Laura mentioned at the wedding. She wasn't just some girl you dated. She was your birth mother trying to find you. The holding cell erupted in chaos. Ryan lunged for the phone. Laura screamed for guards. But through it all, I watched Susan, my foster mother, Laura's spy, and apparently something more. The fire investigation, I said, understanding finally dawning. You weren't watching me for Laura. You were protecting me from her. Susan nodded, tears falling. Because 25 years ago, I was that waitress's best friend. I watched Laura destroy her. I couldn't let it happen again. The guards burst in, but it was too late. The truth had broken Laura's perfect narrative. Ryan's face showed the devastation of a lifetime of lies unraveling. I picked up the divorce papers and tore them in half. You're right, Laura. I did forget something about power. I met her furious gaze. Sometimes it's not about who has the most weapons. It's about who has the truth. Guards! Laura's composure shattered. Arrest them all! But Ryan stepped between us. No, Mother, no more lies, no more games. He turned to me. I want to know everything. Laura's carefully constructed world crumbled around her as Susan's phone continued playing, revealing decades of buried truths. And in that moment, I realized, sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's forcing them to face themselves. The morning newspaper lay on my desk at Daniel's old firm, my firm now. The headline still drew stares from passing employees. Harrison Empire crumbles. CEO Laura Harrison faces federal charges. I traced the smaller headline below. Environmental scandal claims multiple victims. Whistleblower Daniel Chen named posthumously. The door opened. Ryan entered, looking older in his casual clothes, so different from his former polished self. They found Mother's offshore accounts. The prosecutor says she'll likely take a plea deal. And your birth mother? Flying in tomorrow. He fidgeted with his wedding ring, still wearing it, though we both knew our marriage was over. Susan's helping me prepare. Says she kept letters, photos, everything Mother hid. My phone buzzed. David out of the hospital and back at the brewery. The environmental violations had been traced to Laura's shell companies, clearing him of wrongdoing. Another piece of justice, falling into place. Daniel knew, didn't he? Ryan's voice was quiet. About everything. I opened my drawer, pulling out Daniel's last letter, delivered by his sister after they found his car. Laura destroyed his family's business 20 years ago. He spent his career gathering evidence, building connections. I met Ryan's eyes. He hired me because of my background, knew I'd recognize the patterns. He used you. He gave me the weapons I needed, just like Susan gave you the truth you needed. Ryan sank into a chair. I keep thinking about that night at the beach, our wedding night. If I just stood up to her then... We can't change the past. I stood, gathering my things. But we can choose how it shapes us. The elevator ride down felt final. Outside, Susan waited by her car. Ready? She asked. Almost. I turned to Ryan. Your mother was right about one thing. I never belonged in her world. Elizabeth, but she was wrong about power. I handed him an envelope. These are copies of everything, the evidence, the accounts, the connections. Use them to rebuild something better than what she destroyed. Susan touched my arm. David's waiting. The brewery's evening crowd always needs an extra hand. Ryan stepped forward. I did love you, in my way. I know. That's what made it hurt more. The drive to the brewery was quiet until Susan spoke. You're really giving up the firm? It was never about the power. I watched the city fade into familiar streets. Daniel taught me that revenge isn't just about destruction. Sometimes it's about rebuilding. The brewery's lights glowed warm against the dusk. David stood in the doorway, looking stronger, more himself. Through the windows, I could see the regular crowd. People who worked hard, loved deeply, lived honestly. My phone buzzed one last time. A news alert. Laura Harrison accepts plea deal. Son to testify. I deleted it without reading further. You know, Susan said as we walked toward the entrance, when Laura first hired us to watch you, she said damaged people never truly heal. And now I think some damage makes us stronger, if we choose to build something new from the broken pieces. Inside, David handed me an apron. The familiar weight settled around my waist as conversations and laughter filled the air. No crystal champagne flutes or charity galas here. Just real people, real connections, real life. Table 6 needs menus, David said, then paused. Welcome home, kiddo. I moved through the crowd, notepad ready, remembering the frightened foster child who once thought belonging meant fitting into someone else's world. Laura had tried to break me by exposing my past, never understanding that our pasts don't define us. Our choices do. A young girl sat at table 6, watching her foster parents study the menu with anxious eyes. I recognized that look, the fear of temporary love, of conditional belonging. First time here? I asked, offering her a genuine smile. She nodded. relaxing slightly. "Well then," I said, "let me tell you about our house specials. Sometimes revenge isn't about making others pay. Sometimes it's about proving them wrong. And sometimes healing comes not from destroying the past, but from building a future strong enough to withstand it." I opened my notepad, ready to take their order, ready to begin again.